Okay, I hereby call this meeting of the Richmond Public School Board to order. Before you do the roll call, Ms. Wilson, let me go ahead and say about our procedures with Zoom. First of all, you should always be on mute unless it's your turn to speak, unless you've been called on to speak, like with the roll call. You know, she'll call your name and then you unmute and say here or I if you're Jonathan. And then in the middle of the bottom of your screen, you should see chat. We're going to use chat for when you want to make a comment or have a question. You should have that set to everyone. So it goes to everybody who's on the Zoom with us in our group, not in the public. And please, if you've got Facebook going on your phone, please silence your phone so we don't get that feedback, because we all enjoy that so much. Okay, so now we'll move to the roll call. Ms. Wilson?
Madam Chair, before we do the roll call, did you want to make the announcement about the electronic meeting, or did you want me to do that?
Oh, you do that.
This meeting is being held as an electronic meeting pursuant to and in compliance with the City of Richmond Ordinance 2020-093. And as stated in the notice, there will be no public comment. However, we do have a comment that was submitted to our speakers at rvaschools.net. Those comments have been posted to board docs, and it is being streamed live via the RPS Facebook page, and the agenda for the meeting is posted on board docs and may be viewed at our board docs link. The persons who were responsible for receiving comment was myself, the clerk. Again, that email address is speakers at rvaschools.net. Any comments sent to that address during this meeting will be posted after the meeting. And after the roll call, we can identify how many members of the body are present and participating. Are you ready for the roll call?
Yes.
Ms. Page? Mrs. Page? I saw her.
Oh, no. Ms. Page, can you unmute long enough to answer the roll call, please?
Present.
Thank you.
Ms. Cosby?
Present.
Mr. Young?
Here.
Dr. Sapini? Mrs. Dorr?
Yes.
Here. Thank you. Mr. Barlow?
Here.
Ms. Gibson?
Here.
Mrs. Burke?
Here.
Ms. Owen?
Here.
And Madam Chair, you have a quorum of your 9 board members present.
Thank you. And our next item on the agenda is 1.02. Everybody, remember, if you're not speaking, please mute.
Okay.
Is 1.02 to approve the resolution for continuity of government during COVID-19 pandemic. Ms. Wilson, do we need to read that, or everybody saw it already?
I can read it if they would like, Madam Chair.
Okay, go ahead and read it.
Okay, give me one moment to pull it up. The resolution reads as follows. Whereas on January 31st, 2020, the United States Secretary of Health and Human Services declared that a public health emergency existed for the entire United States to aid the healthcare community in responding to the novel coronavirus, COVID-19, And whereas on March 11, 2020, the World Health Organization declared the COVID-19 outbreak a pandemic. And whereas on March 12, 2020, the Governor of Virginia issued Executive Order 51, 2020, declaring a state of emergency for the Commonwealth of Virginia arising from the COVID-19 pandemic. And whereas Executive Order number 51 in 2020 acknowledged the existence of a public health emergency, which constitutes a disaster as defined by Section 44-146.16 of the Code of Virginia, 1950, as amended, arising from the public health threat presented by a communicable disease anticipated to spread. And whereas Executive Order number 51, 2020, ordered implementation of the Commonwealth of Virginia Emergency Operations Plan, activation of the Virginia Emergency Operations Center to provide assistance to local governments, and authorization for executive branch agencies to waive any statute or regulation as appropriate. And whereas on March 13, 2020, the President of the United States declared a national emergency beginning on March 1, 2020, in response to the spread of COVID-19. And whereas on March 13, 2020, the Mayor of the City of Richmond, as the city's Director of Emergency Management, declared a local emergency pursuant to Section 44-146.21A of the Code of Virginia, 1950, as amended, in response to the spread of COVID-19. And whereas on March 16, 2020, the Council of the City of Richmond adopted Resolution number 2020-R025, consenting as required by Section 44-146.21A of the Code of Virginia, 1950, as amended, to the declaration made by the Mayor of the City of Richmond that a local emergency exists in the City of Richmond in response to the spread of COVID-19. And whereas Section 15.2-1413 of the Code of Virginia, 1950, as amended, provides that a locality may by ordinance provide a method to assure continuity of government in the event of a disaster, notwithstanding any contrary provision of law for a period not to exceed 6 months after any such disaster. And whereas on March 20th, 2020, the Attorney General of Virginia issued an opinion affirming the authority conferred upon a locality as provided in Section 15.2-1413 of the Code of Virginia, 1950, as amended. And whereas on March 23rd, 2020, the Governor of Virginia issued Executive Order number 53, 2020, requiring the closure of all K-12 public schools, including the Richmond City Public Schools, for the remainder of the 2019-2020 school year, and also imposing temporary restrictions on public gatherings, including a prohibition on all public and private in-person gatherings for more than 10 individuals. And whereas on March 30th, 2020, the Governor of Virginia issued Executive Order number 55, 2020, a temporary stay-at-home order due to COVID-19, ordering all individuals in Virginia to remain at their place of residence except as provided in that order, and Executive Order number 53, 2020, and also included the imposition of criminal penalties for violations of the prohibition on public and private in-person gatherings of more than 10 individuals. And whereas on April 9th, 2020, the Council of the City of Richmond, pursuant to Section 15.2-1413 of the Code of Virginia, 1950, as amended, adopted ordinance number 2020-093 to assure the continuity of government during the disaster resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic by modifying the practices and procedures of public bodies to permit electronic meetings. And whereas through ordinance number 2020-093, the Council of the City of Richmond specifically found that COVID-19 is a communicable disease of public health threat that affects the COVID-19, that the effects of COVID-19 constitute a disaster as defined by Section 44-146.16 of the Code of Virginia, 1950, as amended, and that the spread of COVID-19 makes it unsafe for a quorum of public bodies to assemble in one location or for public bodies to conduct meetings in accordance with normal legal requirements, practices, and procedures. And whereas through ordinance number 2020-093 of the Council of the City of Richmond, adopted certain procedures to ensure the continuity of government during the COVID-19 pandemic disaster, including granting authority to all local public bodies and their members, including the school board of the City of Richmond, to participate in meetings and hearings through electronic means of communications without the assemblage of a physical quorum, provided that requirements related to notice of the meeting, meeting agenda, special announcements during meetings, public participation, voting, and meeting minutes are followed as set forth in said ordinance. Whereas the school board of the city of Richmond affirms the determinations of the existence of a disaster and the declaration of a state of emergency throughout the entire city of Richmond, affecting the students, staff, facilities, and members of the school community of Richmond City Public Schools, and the school board being a public body included within the scope of the city of Richmond's ordinance number 2020-093, adopts the procedures for the conduct of public meetings as set forth in ordinance number 2020-093, and whereas Article 8, Section 7 of the Constitution of Virginia and Section 22.1-28 of the Code of Virginia 1950 as amended vest the supervision of the public schools of the school division in the school board, and whereas the school board of the city of Richmond hereby reasonably determines and finds, based upon the above and all available facts, that the ongoing and continuing operation of the school board is essential and indispensable to address the emergency and involve critical functions and legally imposed procedures which, if not addressed, would result in immediate and irrevocable harm upon the students, staff, operations, facilities, and community members of the Richmond City Public Schools. And whereas those critical and essential functions and legally required procedures which must be addressed by the school board to ensure continuity of government include, but are not limited to, the procurement of goods and services necessary to continued operations, excuse me, adoption of budgets and or budget amendments, legal compliance, and other essential matters critical to the operations of the school division, which are anticipated in the immediate future and thereafter during the pendency of the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the school board of the city of Richmond, in compliance with all federal and state directives and the procedures adopted by the city council of the city of Richmond in ordinance number 2020-093, made during the pendency of the city's ordinance number 2020-093, participate in meetings necessary for the continuity of government solely by electronic communication means without a quorum physically assembled in one location, while remaining in compliance with the requirements set forth in said ordinance. And now therefore be it further resolved that such meetings, subject to federal, state, and local health and safety mandates, standards, and guidance, may be held without permitting members of the public to be physically present in a central location or in the same location as the school board or any of its members, so long as the requirements of public participation as set forth in the city's ordinance number 2020-093 are followed. And now therefore be it further resolved that the school board of the city of Richmond may alter the established meeting schedule as necessary to protect the health and safety of the school board members, staff, students, and members of the public. And now therefore be it further resolved that any policies or regulations of Richmond City Public Schools are suspended, waived to the extent that they are inconsistent with this resolution and the city's ordinance number 2020-093. And now therefore be it further resolved that this resolution shall be effective upon its adoption by the school board of the city of Richmond and shall remain in effect during the pendency of the city's ordinance number 2020-093, including for any applicable period upon the extension of said ordinance. Can't hear you.
Was that just the one for the continuity of government?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Is there a motion to adopt that resolution?
So moved.
All right, Ms. Burke has moved it,
Second.
and Ms. Dorr has seconded. Okay. Then we will have a roll call vote for this resolution for the continuity of government.
Is there any discussion, Madam Chair?
I'm sorry, is there any discussion? Okay, I don't see any.
Okay. Ms. Page?
Yes.
Ms. Dorr, Ms. Cosby,
Yes.
Mr. Young,
Aye.
Dr. Sapini,
Yes.
Mr. Barlow,
Yes.
Ms. Gibson.
Hi, I had asked to make a comment during
I'm
discussion.
sorry. About this resolution?
Yes.
Okay.
So I wanted to see, does the resolution specify that we can have meetings more frequently?
Ms. Lilly?
Yes, the resolution doesn't stipulate the number of meetings or restrict the number of meetings in any way.
I asked because I shared this afternoon with my board colleagues the version of the resolution that was adopted by the Chesterfield School Board. And in their resolution, one, it notes that the meetings are, that public comment is, you're able to, it has specific language, specific public comment, and allows folks to be able to submit later in the day, which I think would be important to adopt. But also the language, and I apologize, I'm pulling this up now. It says, further, notwithstanding the foregoing, the school board may, at its election, conduct meetings for the duration of the emergency through regular procedures or by electronic access in compliance with Virginia Code, and if applicable, and may alter meeting schedules as needed to protect the health and safety of school board members, staff, students, members of the public. So I believe that that might be important to include so that we can be more nimble as we move forward, given the current circumstances.
May I?
Yes, Ms. Lilly?
The resolution on page 3 includes the language that speaks to altering the established meeting schedule as necessary to protect the health and safety. So that is in there. And I also thought, I could be wrong, but to speak to the public piece of it, the ordinance itself, the city council's ordinance itself includes the public participation piece that I don't believe is required. Well, I know it's not required to be specified in this particular resolution, other than that we will abide by the public participation. So I don't believe, nor do I recommend that a specific time as listed in Chesterfield's would be listed for the same reason, to be nimble in case it needs to change depending on the circumstances. So the provision does not, the resolution does not prohibit you all from having 20, 30 meetings if you wish. It doesn't limit that, doesn't regulate that, nor does it regulate a specific time for the public comment period to be introduced. However, I would not recommend you introduce that into the resolution because that does not lend itself to being nimble as the resolution is setting forth to be.
So we had a motion and it has been seconded. Are you asking to amend the motion, Ms. Gibson?
Well, Ms. Owen, if I may, you all are practically all the way through the vote of this motion. I don't know if this and then maybe add something so that you can finish out this motion.
Okay, let's go ahead and finish it out.
Ms. Gibson? Ms. Gibson, are you voting?
My apologies. So, I'd asked to speak before the vote began.
I'm sorry.
And so, at this stage, I think as far as it goes with public comment, I want to make sure that the public has sufficient time in order to be able to bring concerns as we move forward. And so, I understand at this meeting that we gave a noon deadline. Other jurisdictions are allowing more time. And so, I just want to ensure that that the public is able to participate in the same, in the same fashion as much as possible moving forward, despite current circumstances.
I'm sorry, I thought you had asked to speak about the commenting on the personal page, so I misunderstood. So are you voting? Are you abstaining? Are you a yes or no?
I guess I will abstain for the vote. I'd like to include language specific to public comment.
Mrs. Burke
Yes.
and Ms. Owen. Your vote, Ms. Owen?
Yes.
Thank you. And the motion passes 8-0 with 1 abstention.
Okay. So now the adoption of the agenda. There was one addition about public comment. Is that correct, Ms. Wilson?
We did add public comment, yes.
Is that now or after the adoption?
That is going to be after the adoption, after the approval of the minutes. It will be section 2, and it will be 2.01.
Okay. So we are adding to the agenda public comment as 2.01. And so I would like to have a motion to adopt the agenda as amended.
Actually,
So moved.
I'm
I
sorry.
do have a question.
Well, I was just going to say the agenda actually was changed earlier today, so public comment is already on the agenda. We don't have to add it unless you read it.
Okay. Okay. All right. So
I have-
I think that was Ms. Dorr that,
Well, I just have a quick clarification.
all right.
The
Ms.
comment,
Dorr has a question.
and I'd be happy to make a motion after the clarification, but will we be reading public comment during the public comment section?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay. So moved.
Second.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear who seconded.
Mr. Barlow.
Thank you. That does not require a roll call vote, Madam Chair. That's just an all in favor.
All right.
Excuse me. This is
Yes.
per the ordinance. Ms. Owen, may I speak?
Yes.
Per the ordinance, all your votes need to be roll call votes. So-
Okay, thank you. So,
I'm sorry, but this is Felicia. Before we get to that, since there's already been a second, do I have to wait to add an amendment? I'd like to add, and I don't know, I'm looking and I haven't seen it, updates on the Chromebook distribution and our education, COVID education planning, or rather distance learning plans.
Okay. Ms. Cosby,
Yes.
when you want to speak, if you would put it in chat, which is in the middle of your screen, and send it to everyone. And so I will then now ask Mr. Camrus. Mr. Camrus, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Were either of those or both of those part of your presentation this evening?
Yes, I'll give an update on food technology and our RPS at home online learning.
Okay, thank you. So it's on the agenda as part of Mr. Camrus's presentation, Ms. Cosby. So I would say if he doesn't address what you want during that, if you would like to raise it at that time. And now Ms. Gibson has something she would like to say.
I would like to include a discussion specific to the construction of the new schools.
Okay. Mr. Cameras, is that also included?
Yeah, I'm glad to give an update.
Okay. All right. And
One,
Ms. Page had asked, public comments will be posted on the website. In fact, I think the ones that came in before noon today are already there, and we will read those. And
Yes.
anything that came in after noon, at noon, anything that came in after 12 noon will be posted after the meeting as
Yes.
part of public comment. So if you go to the agenda on the website, in board docs, and click on public comment, all the public comments that we have received so far are already there. Isn't that right, Ms. Wilson?
Yes, they are.
And anything we've received after 12 noon will be posted later.
Yes.
Okay?
May I say something, Madam Chair?
Okay.
I see comments popping up. I think you just wanted your board members to say they wanted to say something, not go into detail because the public
Right.
can read those.
Yes. Because we need to vote on the agenda.
Right.
So, Ms. Gibson, if we could add that pay concerns with the transportation team when we talk about the budget. And there is also something about the budget, about the cleaning of the school. So let's go ahead and vote on the agenda at this time. Okay, wait a minute. Ms. Gibson would like to speak.
I think it's I would prefer to have the discrete, each item to have an agenda item. As a person who, as an advocate, is frequently going back to previous meetings and looking for information, when we capture so much into one line item, it is difficult to keep track of and to know that that discussion was included. So I think as it pertains to the school construction, that should be an individual discussion item. I would agree that talking about the pay concerns for the transportation should be an individual conversation as well. And I believe the same for the update on Chromebooks and online learning.
And then Dr. Sapini also wanted an update on the cleaning of schools progress. So, so we now have proposals to add 4 agenda items, I guess, under administration business. So that is a proposal for addition, an amendment to the motion. So the motion was made by Ms. Dorr. Ms. Dorr, are you okay with those 4 amendments?
Yes.
Mr. Barlow, are you also?
Yes.
Okay, then first we vote on the, or do we don't, if they accept that, we don't need to vote on that?
Correct.
Okay. So now we will vote on the agenda as amended.
Mr. Barlow,
Yes.
Ms. Dorr,
Yes.
Dr. Sapini,
Yes.
Ms. Cosby,
Yes.
Ms. Page, Ms. Page,
I believe Miss Page got knocked out,
Yeah, I did for a minute too.
but I don't see her in the virtual waiting room. So
okay.
I think she's trying to get back in. As soon as I see her, I will put her back in.
Thank you. Mr. Young,
Aye.
Ms. Gibson,
Yes.
Ms. Burke,
Yes.
and Ms. Owen.
Yes, but can we wait for Ms. Page?
Okay.
And while we're waiting, Ms. Dorr, I now see that you would like to speak. Can you wait till the vote is completed, or do you need to speak about it?
That was in regards to the agenda. I had an idea for how to incorporate folks' thoughts, but we've already approved it, so we're good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Did you see her in the waiting room, Mr. Cameras?
Ms. Owen? Ms. Owen?
Yes.
This is Ms. Page has had an issue with her internet. She is on speakerphone.
Oh.
Ms. Page, can you hear me talk?
Yes.
And can you all hear Ms. Page?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so Ms.
Yes.
Page, they were voting on the agenda as amended.
And the amendment was, again, could you repeat that?
To receive an update on Chromebook distribution and COVID-19 education planning, to receive an update on the new school construction, and to receive an update on pay concerns regarding transportation, and to receive an update on cleaning of school, on the progress of cleaning schools.
Okay.
All right. So you vote to approve the agenda as amended?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. The motion passes unanimously.
All right. Next on the agenda is to approve the minutes of the November 4th and November 18th, 2019 school board minutes, the November 25th public hearing, the December 2nd special meeting, December 2nd regular meeting, December 16th special meeting, January 6th special meeting, and January 6th meeting. So those minutes have been shared with the board and also posted to board docs. Do I have a motion to approve them?
So moved.
Okay, that was Ms. Page moving to approve them.
Thank you. Is there a second?
There a second? Okay, Mr. Barlow seconded.
Mr. Barlow?
So now we're having the roll call vote.
Okay. Mr. Barlow?
Yes.
Ms. Dorr?
Yes.
Ms. Gibson?
Ms. Gibson, are you voting to approve the minutes?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Young?
Aye.
Dr. Sapini?
Yes.
Ms. Cosby?
Yes.
Ms. Page?
Yes.
Ms. Burke?
Yes.
And Ms. Owen?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Then we are moving to board action item 2.01, which is sharing the public comment. Now, what we have asked Ms. Wilson to do is to read the public comments with the name of the person who submitted them. But if they are lengthy, we will stop after 2 minutes. Okay? All right, Ms. Wilson, please go ahead and share with us the public comments.
Okay. Ms. Zucchini, I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly. Her comment is the completion of the 5% salary increase, 2% this coming school year was a long time coming. While only really responding to inflation, it started to send a vital message to Richmond residents about reprofessionalizing, honoring, and retaining our teachers and their talents. Especially at this time, the complexities and impacts of our job are being shared on our community. Parents and local leaders are finally able to empathize with our difficult yet wonderful days at school. Eliminating the 2% increase would continue to send the wrong message to our precious teachers and powerful community. Again, especially after absorbing the effects of COVID-19, I ask that our representatives answer the empathy and stick to their promise of advocating for and supporting the teachers of Richmond Public Schools. The next comment came from, it looks like Kaya Princess, and her comment basically was, will kids have to take the SOLs we had to take this year next year? Shelly J, what is the process of getting senior dues back? How do the students go about getting their formal diplomas? Tara Gray, not sure this is for comments, but I'm a second grade teacher and I would love for our school district to do year-round school, just some food for thought. Carl Calhoun, how will the eligibility of our athletes be determined for varsity sports? Will their hard work over the second half of the year not count for them playing a sport next year because it was based off their first semester grades? Elizabeth Forrester, I just wanted to ask about and bring the board's and superintendent's attention to the issue of rezoning and the grandfathering policy for rising 5th, 8th, and 12th graders. I am a teacher at Bouchard Middle School, and many of my English learners live in Southwood apartments and are set to be rezoned to the middle school next year. Many of my rising 8th grade students turned in the form to opt into staying at Bouchard for their 8th grade year, but there was never any clarification on whether or not transportation would be provided for them to get to and from Bouchard from Southwood each day. Has there been any discussion or decision regarding transportation for these students? Additionally, what steps are planned is being made so that this large population of English learners that will be at the new middle school will continue to receive adequate support and resources, since so many ESL and bilingual programs are currently in place for them at Bouchard. Devana, as a high school senior, what are your plans for prom? I understand that graduation is more important and people would rather attend that event more than prom, but someone like me who doesn't have a father figure in my life to give me a special dance in my prom dress or just in my living room period, I feel like I'm missing out on one of the most memorable moments of my life, and I truly don't want to pass that up. Cheryl and Scott Lage, we would very much like to thank Harry Hughes, Tracy Epp, Sade Harris, Michelle Hudasco, the Richmond School Board, and Superintendent Cameras for the incredible amount of energy and effort spent to get our RPS students equipped to continue their education in these recent mandatory off-site weeks. We appreciate you. Clearly, it is way too late to benefit our RPS 2020 graduating seniors. College admission process, we respectfully ask yet again for 1, the business rules algorithm for GPAs, 2, the master list extracted from the program of studies from RPS's academic department that gets uploaded into Aspen, and 3, the GPA calculation tool. We know all at RPS have been extraordinarily busy since we were offered these assets in early March. However, it is not too late for RPS's now home-based, soon-to-be graduates to be provided the tools to check their transcripts, accuracy, and apply for scholarships. Speaking of the soon-to-be graduating class of 2020, it might be worth considering a reallocation of funds to create Richmond Public Schools Class of 2020 graduate yard signs for our city's seniors. Perhaps some of the byproduct savings from not renting the Altria and other locales for graduation ceremonies could be used to honor this class accordingly. Thanks to each of you for your service to our kids. Wishing you and yours health and peace. Jeannie Boker, thank you to RPS for all of your hard work during this difficult time. It is wonderful to be part of a school system that is working so hard for its students. That said, in times of crisis, it is more important than ever to examine critically the choices public administrations make on behalf of the public. As a result, I do have some concerns and questions about policies undertaken by RPS at this time. 1, please do not implement a fall SOS testing should school come back in session for the sake of having data points. We are all going through a collective and individual trauma, and SOL's testing and data points should not be at the forefront of our children's academic recovery. 2, please reconsider your policy of merely posting public comments in board docs. Public participation and feedback should be embraced and publicized as much as possible at this time, rather than relegated to a PDF on board docs. Please read comments submitted out loud at the meetings, and please be sure to check for comments submitted on the day of the meeting. 3, please consider adding details to or modifying the board resolution suspension of school board policies during COVID-19 pandemic. I am apprehensive of any resolution that could minimize the oversight and powers of the elected school board without further details or additional limitations on the power of the RPS administration. 4, where do things stand with selecting a curriculum for next year? This crisis has highlighted the need for teachers who can teach our kids rather than prepackaged, or as great as it is to have it RPS at home. RPS math, to be frank, is a mess. I'd rather have teachers teaching my kids than a corporate curriculum package any day of the week. And 5, looking ahead to FY21, I am concerned about Dreams for RPS priorities and the administration's priorities to revisit or maintain certain items. Of course, tough choices have to be made, but it's a bit difficult to imagine STEM academy planning and funding continuing while VPI children could face continued transportation issues, and attendance officers, reading specialists, exceptional education positions, etc. are not funded. Thank you as ever for your service. D. Lockhart, I have heard that we will not be hiring new employees. Does this mean that vacant teaching positions will stay as such and class sizes will increase? Most schools do not get a lot of substitutes, and to be honest, when there is a substitute, students can be very unruly. When there is no sub, there are 2 options. Another teacher forfeits their planning to cover the class, or classes are combined. With all that being said, learning generally cannot continue when a teacher is out. If this virus is still around next year, teachers will most likely get sick and be out for weeks. What is your plan to deal with this issue? And will teachers be protected financially if absent due to this virus? I say this as most young teachers do not have enough sick days to be absent that long. Emily Sterrett, good morning/evening. First of all, thank you for everything you are doing. I know this is uncharted territory, to say the least. My question, when will a decision be made regarding the modifications to the 2020-2021 school calendar? If school starts early, how far in advance will we know? Thank you. Sade Lee, good morning. My daughter is currently a rising 4th grader attending Bellevue as an out-of-zone student. My son was placed on the waiting list for kindergarten at Bellevue on February 6th. My question is, will I know if he is eligible to attend Bellevue this September with his sister? Unfortunately, COVID-19 has placed his decision on hold. Thank you. Amanda Reisner, good evening, everyone. I wanted to begin by saying I appreciate how hard the central office team has worked to make sure our kids are fed every day. So thank you. That is one less thing we teachers have to worry about. I was looking at the budget and had some thoughts from that and all that has gone on over the last few weeks. As we start to plan for the fall, I hope that we are already starting to plan what school will look like if we return on time, if we don't return on time, and what happens if we return but need to shut down again. I strongly suggest that we be proactive about the next school year. Obviously, we didn't know this was all going to happen, and we have been doing our best to figure it out along the way. But now that we have some foresight, I hope that we will start making plans for what comes next immediately. Most importantly, I hope that teachers are part of the planning team. We are the ones on the front lines talking to our kids and families and know firsthand what is working and what is not. Oftentimes, teachers' voices are minimal in decision-making, but I think it is imperative that we are a part of the next steps the district takes on how school looks in the fall, and not just one teacher. Various teachers from across the district, because each school has different successes and different struggles that they can bring to the table to help shape the 2020-2021 school year. In terms of money and the budget, it said reductions in class sizes will be revisited, but with social distancing being such a key factor in defeating this virus, Don't we need to make sure we keep classes small, if not even reduce the class size to a smaller ratio than it currently is? I look forward to seeing how innovative and proactive RPS is going to be in planning the next school year so our students can get the best education they deserve, no matter what COVID-19 throws at us. Thank you for your time. Ainsley Perkins. I want to thank the administration for their ongoing efforts to ensure that students continue to have food security during this pandemic. Thank you to Dr. Epp and her team for the creation of RPS at Home. Now that it's been launched, perhaps a second look would be helpful. I've heard teachers' concerns regarding the length of videos, 30 to 40 minutes, as it relates to students' attention spans and abilities. How do we ensure that the ELL page allows students to navigate it without assistance from their parents, some of whom cannot read or write? I know the administration has had to prioritize based on the pandemic. We are approaching the end of the school year. Timely information is needed on the next steps for rezoning implementation, teachers' contracts, etc. Finally, the budget. It appears the most recent monthly financial statement that monthly financial statement that there is an almost $2 million deficit to pay owed to support staff. Budget transfers are needed to pay these staff members. Additionally, our teachers need raises now more than ever. RPS struggles with issues of equity for all students. A good place to start is with more music and art classes in the district that has students who struggle with obesity and diabetes. PE classes are essential. Thank you. And that concludes the public comments that were received before 12 o'clock today.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson.
You're welcome.
And I would also like to let you know that Ms. Udasco, when there were specific questions, has already addressed those with those folk. Moving now to the to board action item 2.02. This one is receive for action a resolution for suspension of school board policy during the COVID-19 pandemic. And in view of our time, I would like to say that we all have it, we've had it, and we'll dispense with the reading of that resolution. I do believe that Ms. Gibson wanted again to discuss changes to this. Am I correct, Ms. Gibson? Yes, okay. So Ms. Gibson, you wanted to suggest a change to the resolution for suspension of school board policy.
So my, my hope is that since with the adoption of the resolution, if the previous resolution, if we have the ability to be more nimble in terms of the frequency that the board meets, that that in lieu of suspending our policy, that we would be able to meet more frequently to make changes and address the needs at hand. So that would be my first preference. In lieu of that, my request is that we look at language that would speak specifically to timing, that the board would be notified of such changes to any policy, and that both the board and the public is provided updates in terms of any policies that have been suspended, and then also include language that specifies that any suspended policies must be ratified by the board at the next meeting, or that, and if not, then the action would not continue to stand. I think that public input is of important, especially, sorry, I have a son also sharing this table with me, that public input is the sacred cow here. So, so as we think specifically about the budget process, I think it's critical that we not make changes to any policies that would take less, that would basically impact the public participation in this process. And so, those are my primary concerns. So the budget process, notifying the board and the public, say, a week in advance, and and that the board must ratify any changes at its next meeting.
Ms. Lilly?
Yes, I'd like to bring the board's attention. I know we did not read it out loud, but this particular resolution, and I would like to mention that this is a resolution that was a model resolution that was provided by the Virginia School Board Association. And the resolution specifically speaks to, in the final clauses of the provision on page 2, that this resolution would suspend such policies or provisions within policies which reflect legal and or regulatory requirements that have been waived by the governmental authority which enacted those requirements. And so this is not a blanket policy suspension for all of school board policy. This speaks to, and if you read the preamble to the resolution, it speaks to the provisions of the regulations and policies that the Virginia Department of Education had to get waivers from with respect to standards of learning testing and those types of federally and state mandated requirements, if you will, that the state has already been waived from. And so this is what this resolution speaks to. And I'd again like to, again say this was the model language that was provided to us by the state.
Okay, so obviously we haven't got the ability for anybody to write a motion at this point, but I think what Ms. Gibson is proposing is that she would like to amend the resolution. So do we have a second to Ms. Gibson's proposal to amend the resolution?
Second.
I'm sorry, who was that? Was there a second?
Dr. Sapini.
Okay, Dr. Sapini has seconded it. So now when we vote on, help me with this, Ms. Lilly and Ms. Wilson, do we vote just on the amendment first?
First, we would need to know specifically the language that Ms. Gibson wants to include or amend the resolution. You just can't say, I want to amend the resolution without specifically giving the language that you would like to amend it to. So, we can.
And what
themes, but given the context that I provided, I don't know whether that changed the request, or I don't know exactly what to change it to unless that's articulated.
Okay, Ms. Gibson, did her explication satisfy you?
I think that the additional language should be, let's see, so therefore be it further resolved that the superintendent will notify the board and public 1 week prior to the suspension of any policy, and that the board must ratify that policy change at its next public meeting, or the action will not stand.
I would like to add again that the waivers that were already received and obtained by the states for SOL, I don't want to put the board in a situation where if the Virginia Department of Education has already sought waivers, for example, for the standards of learning test, what later is the board going to ratify? Those standards have already been changed. And so the resolution is attempting to codify the changes that were already done by the waivers and all of that from the State Department and from the federal, on the federal level. So, I just want to make sure the board understands that.
Okay, so perhaps it's therefore be it resolved that the superintendent notify the board of any further policy changes or waivers. Would that satisfy you, Ms. Gibson?
Yes, and I'm speaking specifically to school board policy. So if there are state regulations that the waiver addresses, that is, that's one thing, but I'm speaking specifically to the suspension of board policies.
of course, our policies, some of them are in line with the state. And so those are the ones that, you know, so we'll just say that this will cover those, but you're saying if there's anything further down the line. So can I include that word?
Absolutely.
Be it resolved that the superintendent notify the board of any further policy waivers in advance.
The board and public.
The board and public in advance. And you're saying 7 days in advance?
Yes.
All right, that's one. What was the other?
And that the board must ratify at its next meeting, ratify that change at its next meeting, or the action does not stand.
All right, so that's really one amendment.
Yes.
All right. Okay, I'm going to read it again. And is this the only one, Ms. Gibson? Are you satisfied about the other things you raised?
Yes, as long, I mean, Ms. Lilly can speak to the pandemic. I just want to make sure it's very explicit that this is, you know, what the duration of this is. And so is it defined by the state of emergency that is been set by the governor? What is the end date for this resolution?
On page 2, it says the suspension of the policies of the school board is in effect for the duration of the time that the waiver of laws and or regulations reflected in the policies are waived. So again, this is tracked back to the waivers, the regulations that have been suspended and or modified during the pandemic. So as long as those have been modified and the requirements are no longer there, then, you know, this resolution would be effective throughout that process. I'd also like to mention something about the ratification. It's very true. If the superintendent is going to, just in a matter of practicality, if an action is going to be taken with the suspension of a policy and the board later does not ratify that and an action has already been taken, that could be tricky. And so I don't know how that would work practically. And also Ms. Page would like to speak.
Yeah, I saw that Ms. Page would like to speak. So Ms. Page?
Yes, Madam Chair. That the information that Attorney Lilly has provided us, it speaks to any of the concerns that board members may have. I mean, because the resolution was guidance from the Virginia School Board Association. Is that correct?
Yes.
And so Attorney Lilly has addressed any concerns that we as board members, you know, may have. So my question is, under your advisement, are there any changes that would need to be made? Attorney Lilly? Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Ms. Page.
Okay.
And I'm only...
All right, Ms. Lilly?
Yes. I'm only suggesting that when we're putting language in a resolution, that the language that's being added makes is feasible. And I just want the board to understand that if they're adding the language, which is your pleasure to do, actions that have already been taken in line with a policy suspension that doesn't, you know, other policies that the new language would speak to, a later ratification or vote to not ratify a policy that has been already set aside and action already taken could be problematic. That's all I'm suggesting for that.
Okay.
All right, so let's go ahead and vote on this amendment. And I have it. I will read it again. This is Ms. Gibson proposed and Dr. Sapini seconded this change, this amendment to the resolution that we add. Therefore, be it resolved that the superintendent notify the board and public of any further policy waivers 7 days in advance, and the board must ratify this at its next meeting or the action will not stand. Okay, Ms. Wilson, let's have our vote.
Ms. Dorr?
Yes.
Mr. Barlow?
Yes.
Ms. Gibson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Aye.
Dr. Sapini?
Yes.
Ms. Cosby?
Yes.
Ms. Page?
Ms. Page?
Ms.
You need to vote on the
Amendment?
amendment.
No.
Was that a no? Ms. Burke?
No.
And Ms. Owen?
No.
Motion passes 6-3.
Okay. Now we will vote on the resolution as amended. Do I have a motion to approve the resolution as amended?
So moved.
Mr. Barlow? Is there a second?
Second.
Was that
Mr.
Dr.
Young?
Mr. Young?
Yes.
For clarity, Madam Chair,
Yes.
and I apologize because my internet is still not working. So we are voting on the resolution
As amended,
drafted by Virginia School Board Association.
but as amended. The whole resolution with that amendment. Okay?
Okay.
All right, Ms. Wilson?
Ms. Cosby?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Aye.
Dr. Sapini?
Yes.
Ms. Dorr?
Yes.
Mr. Barlow?
Yes.
Ms. Gibson?
Yes.
Ms. Page?
Ms. Page?
Oh, I said yes.
She said yes.
Ms. Burke?
No.
I'm sorry, was that no?
That's correct.
Thank you. And Ms. Owen?
Yes.
Motion passes 8-1.
Okay, then moving on to 2.03. Receive for action the Carl Perkins Grant. And I believe, Dr. Epp, were you going to speak to this?
I can. Mr. Cameras?
Ms. Owen, I just wanted to let everyone know I was going to share my screen to show the presentation. Do you want to do that? Or do you all want to just keep it the way it is and look at it on board docs?
You can show it and then we can have our discussion then.
Well, maybe Dr. Epp can do a voiceover while I'm
Okay.
doing that. Okay, let me get that ready. Okay, can everyone see it now?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, Dr. Epp, you're up.
Good evening, Board Chair Owens. Good evening, Vice Chair Burke. Good evening, board members and Superintendent Cameras. Hope you all are well. I am presenting tonight for your approval the 2020-21 Carl D. Perkins application which is the federal funding source to support our career and technology education, and really any sort of post-secondary preparation for our students. CTE covers 8 program areas that are supported through these funds. And these programs are offered not only at the Richmond Technical Center, but also at our comprehensive high schools, as well as our middle schools. And so the grant funding, which is a standard allocation each year, covers and supports these efforts across our division. The projected allocation for this year is $919,475. And when you do the application, you start with your existing amount, and then as funds increase or decrease, you then adjust with budget amendments aligned to the intent of the grant. For this year's application, like always, there's a set of guidelines that we must use. There are a set of rules that govern the use of Perkins funds. Some items are required, whereas there's a broad range of what's allowable. We are supposed to utilize the following information in making these decisions. First and foremost is looking at our career clusters and pathways that reflect the local job market, and where we can locally offer meaningful career paths. The quality of programming and sort of what our current data tells us, and where we need to improve and where we need to continue because of strength. In particular, looking at the percentage of students who complete a pathway, and that means they've taken enough courses in a particular area to earn an industry certification. And then we also look at the inventory of equipment and resources, and we rely pretty heavily on our teachers across our schools to tell us what they need more of, less of, et cetera. We also look at labor market needs, again, similar to the above, not only what we can prepare folks for, but where folks can be hired. And then we seek advice from industry experts, and we want to make sure that our students have access to industry experts. So looking at ways to increase their time with people in fields that they may be interested in, and exposure to fields so that they can explore options for themselves. For this year's grant application, just a few highlights in terms of how funds will be used. One is we really wanted to focus our investment of our allocations on student experiences that are directly aligned to college and career ready pathways. So in particular, something we have not had in our division, but we think, being in the Capitol in particular, and given the, I think the community strength of advocacy in Richmond, we wanted to add a partnership with Policy Pathways, starting with the summer program. This is a partnership with the same organization that's helping us launch the high school policy course. And the objective is to promote and prepare students of color for careers in the policy and advocacy field. So we will do this with Policy Pathways and VUU. The original goal was to do this with an on-site summer experience, but given the current dynamics, we will we will launch this program this summer with approval of this grant, but it will be virtually rather than in person. But we're hopeful that this will kick off a multi-year relationship. Second, we've partnered with the Community College Workforce Alliance to provide career boot camps to provide local employment job offers to our students, directly in partnership with John Tyler and Reynolds. Given the interest in robotics we've seen from our students, we know that we've had some strength at Thomas Jefferson High School, and our students have done well. We want to support that effort, and we want to expand that effort. So looking at, upon approval, we would fund a robotics club at Thomas Jefferson, because that's where the strength and capacity exists, and then expand that to another school. And our current thinking is Huguenot High School, primarily because we think a lot about staff interest, student interest, and staff and leadership that have the capacity to really launch a program. And again, the idea would be to expand this over time to our comprehensive schools based on student interest and capacity of the staff to really lead this effort. We also want to help fund coding programs at our 2 middle schools, which are slated for the STEM Academy. We would start with MLK and Henderson this year, building upon our Girls Who Code program with VCU, and continue and expand those opportunities for students. And then lastly, just shifted more dollars directly into student experiences, be it attending competitions, stipends for internships and co-ops, additional software to help students prepare and earn their industry certification. Students who complete a program and earn their certification can walk out of high school making middle class wage jobs in high demand fields if we shepherd them correctly. And then we've also wanted to increase our allocation for equipment for our existing programs. And then, so I think headline here is investing in things that are most likely to hit our students directly and give them a range of experiences beyond what they currently have. So trying to add some fresh and novel opportunities for our kids to help them expand their concept of what CTE is and can be. And then we are adding a couple of courses and programs. In particular, Dr. Bell at Armstrong is really excited to launch an aviation program at Armstrong. So we're supporting that effort through this grant. And then we had attempted to do this last year and had to put that on hold, but launching cybersecurity, energy power coursework, and then hospitality and tourism management. We have a lot of students that are interested in the culinary arts, and we want to make sure that they have career opportunities that have upward mobility, particularly in the management line. And so we feel like hospitality and tourism management will be a great path for students who are interested in the culinary arts with a broader set of career opportunities. So the proposed allocation of our funds, you can see here in terms of the amounts and the categories. You can see what is required versus what is allowable. Again, I sort of summarized the key shifts in each of these areas from the prior year. And that is the summary of our Perkins application. Posted on Board Docs is the actual application. I know that I received a couple of questions in advance of the board meeting. I can take those now. Should I take those questions now or wait, Ms. Owen?
You can do those now, and then after that, Mr. Barlow has a question.
Okay, thank you. So Ms. Page asked a few questions. One was, have the schools for the robotics program been identified? And if so, how were they identified? As I shared, one is TJ. Again, there's a we don't just want to put money out there for a program that doesn't exist. And so because that program does exist and there's heavy student interest and staff support, we want to support that effort, and we want to expand that. And Huguenot High School has had various efforts over the past several years around robotics. And we believe that campus is the right campus in terms of student interest and teacher leadership. Again, the idea is to expand that to each high school, but we don't want to just put in one program because students may not want that program. They may want something else. And so these are 2 schools where we know that's an interest. And the second question was, do we have data that shows areas of improvement? Yes, we get a report from the state on all of our CTE data. For 18-19, we get the report. We just got the report, so we can send that out to the board to see the full report. There are certainly there were some highs and lows. We did have a decrease in students who were served by CTE last year by about 1,000. We also had fewer CTE sections. Frankly, I think some of this was due to the refocusing of our courses and scheduling coming out of the transcript audit and making sure that every course we were offering was really intentional, and that we weren't spread so thin that, you know, sections were empty. However, we did have non-traditional enrollment increase by about over 100 students. Perkins describes non-traditional maybe the same way we might describe vulnerable. So this would be students who qualify for free and reduced lunch, students who live with a parent who hasn't completed high school, or a student who is homeless, that sort of population. They track CTE participation that way. The number of our completers, which was our big emphasis last year, did go up by about 30 students, 35 students. So we had more students complete their CTE programs. Again, I think a byproduct of the intentional scheduling with our high school counselors and principals to make sure students were, we weren't just offering a whole range of sections, we were offering the sections that students needed to be completers. And we also saw an increase of about 35 students completers passing their industry exams. So excited about that. And our Governor STEM Academy increased enrollment by 21 students which is offered at the Technical Center and is done in partnership with Project Lead the Way. And then the last question was, what are the plans to just improve and promote CTE awareness overall? So we're doing a couple of things. One, I've met several times over the course of the year with both Mr. Mitchum at the Technical Center and our director of CTE to talk about where do we really want to put our emphasis in terms of courses we're offering, and not just limiting our coursework to the teachers we have today, but making sure we also are recruiting teachers we need for the courses that have high student demand. And I think sometimes we've started first with just what we've always offered and not really said, let's actually pivot because there's not a lot of student interest, or this is an outdated career field. And there's, you know, so much more going on, say, like in our STEM Academy, our Governor STEM Academy, which is around, they get architecture, architectural design, they get engineering, and those are just way more relevant to students right now. We also are working, we had done some work with our 8th graders prior to the closure by working with the RVA Chamber of Commerce and a regional career expo. But we did not get to finish our full plan for 8th graders, which was to involve a field trip to the Technical Center to show students some of the really cool stuff that we have. Like, I think students don't know how cool woodworking can really be, especially when you see our equipment, and when you have a teacher who's really passionate about it and can talk about it. So we want to get those teachers in front of our students. So we were not able to get to that. That was planned right before we left. We also are, our biggest thing is to work with counselors to make sure they have the information they need to promote the right programs to students and to help students understand the benefits of various pathways. And I think once our students have more knowledge, they will be more likely to take advantage of the full suite of activities that we offer through CTE.
Thank you, Dr. Epp. All right, Mr. Barlow, then Ms. Cosby, and then Ms. Burke. So Mr. Barlow.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Dr. Epp, for the rundown here on the shifts with respect to our CTE offerings. I do have a couple of questions. The first is with respect to how the decision-making process between leading up to making these shifts. So in particular, are we getting student input on the front end to see what type of demand we'll have for certain course offerings? I think that's very important for the success of a CTE program, to make sure that there's student interest driving it rather than students who may be placed in certain offerings who don't necessarily have a passion for certain topics.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so actually before we can offer a new course, we do what's called student surveys through CTE, basically late winter every year, where we use the data from last year, and then I believe, so we use the data. There's sort of a timing. You typically do it in the spring, but we use the data from last year to inform from the student survey last year to inform our program of studies choices. So in some ways, in terms of what courses are offered, we have to preempt that decision early because that goes into our program of studies. And we have to validate choices around courses through both what's called the student survey, so student interest. So when we submit course applications to the state, we have to show student interest. And then two, the state works with us to look at enrollment patterns over time. And I will say one of the things they pushed us on last summer was looking at our courses that were lower enrolled. So as we're trying to figure out how to, this sort of gets to the teacher certification and credentialing, which has a little bit longer of a runway, making sure that we are not only promoting the programs we have based on the teachers we have, but also making sure we are looking for teachers for programs that students want. And so we try to do more of that this year.
And then to what degree is that balanced with actual career opportunities in the region and elsewhere?
Well, I mean, one of the things we do as part of the planning process is we have an advisory council board that gives us input. We work with the City of Richmond's Office of Community Wealth Building and Metropolitan Business Leagues to get input on industry labor trends, if you will, and we use that data again to inform it. So, for example, I'll give you an example. So, culinary arts, that is a very popular course and series among our students because it's fun to cook and like learn all of that. But you know, without any planning or intentionality, that alone doesn't like necessarily yield a career. Say, you might be limited to a career as a chef, which might not be, frankly, as viable for large numbers of students. And so while there's a big food scene here, food workers are also not always like upwardly, that's not always, not you know, if you're not intentional, that role could not be upwardly mobile. And so we looked at that and said, okay, well, we want to honor students' interest here. And we know that Richmond is a, growing food city. But we also know that, there's a lot of tourism in Richmond. And so let's add the tourism and hospitality bent to not limit students' career choices. So that's an example of how we tried to marry industry trends with student interest and, frankly, our Dreams for RPS goal that every student leaves high school with, if they're not going into post-secondary study or into the national service, they have a job offer and a living wage role.
Okay. And then the last one I have is a question about how we stay nimble with respect to course offerings and coding, other tech courses, and cybersecurity in particular. Those are fields that evolve so quickly, which is why it can be challenging from my experience to learn them in a formal educational setting. So I am curious to know how we keep up with updates in those types of programs, and then I'll let everyone else go.
Sure. No, I mean, to be honest, I do think I think being nimble with such large programs is difficult anyway, because it takes a lot to pull back an existing program, right? Because there's a lot involved there. And it takes a lot to ramp up a totally new program, be it cybersecurity and coding, because you need a certain skill set for the educator. You have to make investments in the equipment, to your point, which outdates, but also even things like, welding or masonry, which we know is big demand, that takes time to ramp up as well. So I think there's more work to be done in our CT world in terms of being, I think, faster to respond to the labor market for sure. I definitely think we're not where we need to be in terms of being as aggressive as we could be. that in terms of coding and cybersecurity specifically, we're adding those courses this year. But I think this is also where partnerships are going to be really critical. So it may not be that we have to provide the full program in-house when we know that Capital One has a huge community engagement effort, and so we've been in conversations with, at least with the STEM academies, how this might look, and we can look at how that might be a feeder pattern into high school study if students say don't go to Code RVA. So I think part of it is not trying to do that alone, and to utilize, I think our best programs utilize the local business community and their expertise to stay current, combined with a teacher who's really passionate and can sell the program to kids.
Okay, thank you. And now Ms. Cosby.
Thank you. So thank you. I'm excited that we are investing in our CTE program and that we're looking at making some significant changes. I am really excited to see policy pathways. I think that's going to be a very interesting course. But I too had some questions just in terms of us, how we are deciding on industries. I saw in the first slide, or one of the first slides, there was mention of health and, what was it? Health and medicine?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But then I didn't see anything else later on in the presentation about that. And I'm going to go back to that, why I think that's so important. But in addition to the advisory council, I know that there are groups out there that do provide industry data. And I know hospitality, you said culinary and hospitality. And given the current state of events right now with COVID-19, we're seeing in actuality a decrease in those areas. And actually, I was pulling up some information which shows just in March alone, the number of job ads had decreased in culinary and hospitality from 19 to 73%, depending on your position. So I think, to Mr. Barlow's point, we do have to look at how are we nimble, and depending on what's going on, if we can make changes accordingly. And also I wanted to know a little bit about, in terms of our programs, and I know what has been an issue before, our programs, it would take a student so long to complete a program, as opposed to having tiers along the way. So, you get a certificate maybe after your first semester, you get a certificate or certification in A, and then you go to B, and then you go to C. So it's something that you build on. So along the way, I can get skill sets and have documented, have documented.
I think Ms. Cosby froze on my end. Is she frozen for others?
She froze on my end too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Ms. Cosby will come back to us. All right, so Ms. Burke, your questions?
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, Dr. Epp, where are you? I just saw you. Anyway, Dr. Epp, your presentation was absolutely excellent. As Mrs. Cosby just stated, I too am excited because you've built upon the foundation of this grant and you're taking it to the next level. I really like the opportunity of the partnership piece, because we can't do it all, and it's already expertise out there in the community. So thank you for partnering with the Metropolitan Business League. And the pathways, policy pathways, I'm very excited about that, knowing that it's a new program and the energy is positive. Aviation program at Armstrong High, of course, I'm elated about that. What my question is, I have two questions, well, another comment as well. When you stated regarding having students to visit the technical center, I know this grant is for middle and high schools, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, but at some point in time, just like, for instance, all the different careers you just mentioned, when we start that at the elementary level, 4th and 5th graders, that gets them in tune before even getting to the opportunity to get into high school. So I know that wouldn't fall under this grant, but there are plenty of SOLs and great hands-on opportunities for our students to visit the technical center as well, the elementary level. Well, my question is, number one, I too thought about the, as Ms. Cosby stated, the pandemic right now that we're having with the health professions, caregivers piece. I'm in full support of the culinary arts because I hope we don't stay in this state forever, but that's our hope. Right now, that's where we are today, and we have to hope for the future because the city of Richmond, the state of Virginia, as you know, has been, we're known as a foodie town, so I hope that continues. So what my question is, number one, I would like to see more of the health caregivers added. As you know, what's going on regarding so many, there aren't enough caregivers around. So I hope that that is expounded upon as well. And my other question is, and I may be ahead of myself, this is all regarding the grant, and you have done a superb, your team, you've done a superb job with that. I may be ahead of myself, but looking at the federal stimulus money, will that support, if we so desire as a board, to pull from that? Would that give us an opportunity to expand the numbers of students participating? For instance, there are only 50 students for the policy pathways. I don't know how many you were thinking about with the coding programs at ML King and Henderson, but I would like to see those numbers expanded as well. So when we get to the part of discussing the budget and the federal stimulus money, I'm asking, I know that's just a one-time opportunity, but has that conversation come up per se as to if we decide to expand this program, let's say for our upcoming juniors who have missed half of a year as they move forward, is that an opportunity that you all have discussed or considered? Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. I appreciate it. The in terms of using the stimulus funds, I know that that's a big part of tonight's discussion, and so we have not gone very far down that path. Definitely want to, have lots of budget questions. In terms of expansion, I think our limitation right now is, at least for the policy pathways, it's the first go at it too, and so I think part of it is partner. We want to make sure our partners we can take on the right amount. So I can certainly broach that conversation to see if there's possibility for more, but we also want to get student interest up and make sure that there's enough student interest to meet whatever slots we have. So we certainly, I think we could even allocate other funds, even outside of stimulus funds if we needed to, perhaps even Title IV dollars, because that's about career awareness and well-rounded education. So I think that's certainly something we can discuss if folks would like to. My ideal is that we get to a place where we have a menu of summer opportunities that are very grounded in career, like authentic, deep, and rigorous career integration and exploration for high school students. Over time, all students, but especially our older high school students. I want to have a menu that is broad enough to speak to a range of interests, but specific enough to be meaningful and connected to a sort of path of study. So that's where I'd like to go long term. So even if Policy Pathways has 50, we've got a coding academy, we've got all these other things, so that students have meaningful summer experiences as part of thinking about their future. and to put a cherry on top, they would even include, cooperative education where they get paid by an employer. So that's something that we'd like to work towards, particularly as we're thinking about passion for learning. And I think similar, both of you all mentioned the health professions, and that is definitely something we want to invest more in. We have a nursing program, a CNA program, and I think our next step there is to develop a strong community partner to create a career pathway for students to move into an RN, to go from a CNA, to an RN, to maybe even an MSN. So that's sort of where I want to, we have a nursing program. I think we need to be more aggressive about partnerships. So that'll be part of our passion for learning work in the coming year, to be able to launch some kind of partnership with one of the many healthcare community providers in the Richmond area.
Okay. Ms. Cosby is back with us. So Ms. Cosby, we'll welcome you back, and then Ms. Gibson would like to speak.
Thank you. I don't know where I left, and I think you addressed some of it. And I don't know what was the last thing I was talking. What was the last thing you heard?
I'm not, I was listening to Ms. Burke's questions. I forgot. But I know you had expressed, you were talking about health professions. I think that's where I lost. I think that's where you got frozen, as you had finished talking about increasing health professions, but also being mindful of where we are headed in terms of the economy and how that might affect choices. Uh-oh. I think she might have froze again. Everybody in the Richmond area needs to get off Netflix so we have bandwidth. Maybe they're watching the Wish Tree read alouds.
Ms. Gibson, you go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to, I think, reiterate so Ms. Cosby's point, just in terms of the timing with the food and beverage pieces, and looking at the Commerce, the Chamber of Commerce website. I'm aware that there has been lots of discussion in terms of CTE growth in the region, and according to a document from their from a spring biennial report, the top 3 industries students found most interesting included the arts, AV technology and communications, science, technology, engineering, and math, and then health sciences. And so, I don't see the food and beverage included on that, but I also wonder, would it be possible to beef up some of the programs in some of these other areas which have been identified in the region as being of particular interest?
So just to clarify, the example I gave around culinary arts is to add the hospitality and tourism management function, so that it is not purely a path to a food line worker, to be honest. So that was one part of where there is high student interest, to add a management pathway to something there. In terms of the other areas, what we presented in the presentation is not the full scope of services. I just highlighted what we're adding. So we do have, and if you look at our program of studies, we have a significant offering of programs. I mean, we have we're home to the Governor STEM Academy at the Richmond Technical Center. One of the things, and again, this is sort of one of the things we do through that program is students get a 2-week summer. They go to the Hanover Summer Governor's Academy in STEM as part of that program. But we host the Governor STEM Academy at RTC, which is a really robust program. And again, we grew that program this year by about 21 students. And then, so I think there's always more we can do, for sure. And I think it's a matter of prioritization and also change management. I mean, just to be frank, you have to, if we're not going to offer a program, if we're going to add a program, there's only so many students. And so you might take away a program, but that means removing or nixing a position, because these are very career specific and very certification specific programs. And so I'm not going to throw out a field just because I don't want to freak a teacher out. But if there was low enrollment over years, we should pull back that program. But the board also has to understand that that means pulling back that teacher position, which we know is not something we really want to do or is popular. So I think the historical strategy has been to either help that teacher expand their repertoire, which is hard because these are career people first. These are experts and practitioners who then get certified to teach typically. But typically it's been to wait till they are ready to retire and then take advantage of that vacancy to add a more robust program. I'm not saying that's what we should continue to do, but that's how it's been here. But I do think at some point, we should take a hard look at the programs that have been under-enrolled. Our strategy right now is to put efforts into promotion and recruitment of students first before we close down a program, and then to add layers of programs over time. But until we get, our student population is only so large, and until we have more students in our system, there's also a limit of how many programs you can offer with it, just being feasible, not have 2 students in one program for a full-time teacher, for example. So okay. I'm happy to, if you give me, I'm also happy to take that list and outline the current efforts we have underway, and then, be transparent about where we are not yet in those areas. Well, Ms. Owen, I think you're on mute.
Okay. Ms. Page has a question. Ms. Page has a question.
Yes. Again, thank you, Dr. Epp, for answering my questions, but I have another question. Just would like to receive more student feedback so that we can really grow the program and be intentional with our planning and partnership. And I know you spoke to some of those things, but really growing this program, because CTE provide our students with options, because we all know that every student may not be on the college track. So really want to receive student feedback. And as Ms. Burke said, career exploration starts on the elementary level.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And I think we can definitely look at ways to maybe gather student input multiple times during the year, including prior to the program of studies and the like, for sure. So we can definitely look at ramping that up.
Okay, Ms. Cosby. Oh, I'm sorry.
The participation.
Okay, Ms. Cosby is back.
Okay, I'm going to try this again. Very quickly, I think I just wanted to get, if you have not already covered it, did want to get some information about how we can, the tier certification. So a student is able to get certified in something along the way as they are, okay, one. And then second, also looking at, I know there's been a lot of focus on student interest, but I would also like to make sure that we are definitely looking at industry demand. And there is, and I will share with you, Dr. Epp, it's one of several organizations that collect data and are looking at industry changes and demands and doing forecasts on a real-time basis, which I know extremely helpful. And just want to make sure that we do, in addition to, as we're talking about health and medicine, So it's not only nursing programs, but as we're finding today, even if we look at, let's say, epidemiology, so as we look at life sciences, and to make sure that we have programs for students. And it's not just a matter of students being interested in that, but I'll go back to what Ms. Burke has said and what I think all of us have said, you know, making sure that there is exposure early on, because you're not going to have interest in something that you've never been exposed to.
Yes.
Okay.
I would love to see the more on-demand data. That'd be great. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Epp. Can I have, at this point, a motion to approve the Carl Perkins grant?
So move.
Second.
Okay. That was Ms. Page and Mr. Barlow?
No.
Oh, it's Ms. Burke and
Yes.
Mr. Barlow. Okay.
Thank you.
I said it, but I was on mute.
Okay.
All right.
So, Ms. Wilson, can we have our vote, please? Ms. Wilson, are you back?
I'm sorry, yes. There's no further discussion?
No.
Okay. Ms. Page?
Yes.
Ms. Cosby?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Aye.
Dr. Sapini?
Yes.
Ms. Dorr?
Yes.
Mr. Barlow?
Yes.
Ms. Owen?
Yes.
Ms. Gibson?
Yes.
Ms. Burke?
Yes.
And the motion passes 9-0.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Before we do the personnel actions, we added several updates. So, Mr. Camrus and Dr. Epp, the first one I have here was that an update on Chromebook distribution and online learning. So I'm thinking that's probably you, Dr. Epp. Do you feel comfortable doing that? Okay,
Ms.
thank you.
Owen, Madam Chair, excuse me. Did you want that now or in the administration business where everything else is?
Okay, we can put it in administrative business. You want to go ahead and do the personnel actions first? All right, so what numbers are you suggesting, Ms. Wilson, for these? There are 4 of them.
For Chromebook, I have 4.03, and then there's 4.04, receive an update on COVID-19 education planning. 4.05, receive an update on transportation pay concerns. And 4.06, receive an update on the progress of cleaning schools.
As budgetary items and not as administration business?
No, I have that under administration.
Oh, okay. In that 3 point?
We added public information, which became 2, so everything went down a number.
Oh, okay. All right.
Thank you.
Okay. So then in that case, we'll do the personnel actions, which we have in board docs. Do I have a motion to approve the personnel actions?
So move.
All right, that's Ms. Page. Is there a second?
Second.
Was that Mr. Young?
Correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Ms. Wilson?
No discussion on this? Ms. Gibson?
Yes.
Ms. Cosby?
Yes.
Ms. Page?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Aye.
Ms. Dorr?
Yes.
Dr. Sapini?
Yes.
Mr. Barlow?
Yes.
Ms. Burke?
Yes.
Ms. Owen?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
All right. So now you tell me which one is 4.01.
Receive a COVID-19 update.
Okay. Mr. Camrus.
Thank you, Ms. Owen. Good evening, everybody. I will be relatively brief since we have the other agenda items to dig into each of the specific topics. Let me just start by, again, thanking our teachers and our nutrition staff and bus drivers and custodians and principals, speech and language pathologists, everybody who has been pitching in to take care of our students and families since the closure. It's truly been incredibly inspiring. As I shared this week, it's also National Volunteer Week. And so I just want to give a shout out to all the volunteers who have been stepping up in small and large ways. We're so, so grateful, and just, I know it's hard right now for everybody, but the love that our staff has shown to kids and families has just been extraordinary. And so I just want to applaud them all. We are so, so proud of everybody who has stepped up in so many ways. Just at a high level, first with food, the food distribution continues at 55 sites. As I shared last week, we've crossed the 250,000 mark for the number of meals that we have already distributed. So it's a truly staggering number, both in terms of just how much need there is out there, but also just the incredible way the team and the community have pulled together to take care of our families. As I have shared before, our intention is to continue the food distribution until we reopen, and that could be 2 months or 4 months or whatever the case may be. And we're working with the city and the Department of Parks and Rec, which usually handles things over the summer, to maintain that. We think it's best to just keep going with the program that we have now, so that families can have that consistency and not have much of a change. Let me run through each of the high-level topics, and then we can go deep with Dr. Epp and Dr. Harris on the call. In terms of online learning, I have to just, well, first, before I leave the food, let me just say a huge thank you to Dr. Harris and her work to coordinate all this, Susan Roberson from the food and nutrition team, the folks on the transportation side, everybody. But really, Dr. Harris has been the point on this, and just couldn't be more thrilled with her leadership of this work, and so, so grateful to her and her team for everything that they're doing to make this possible. Switching to the online learning, let me also give kudos to Dr. Epp and her team for putting together RPS at home on such a short notice. It's just been incredible to see the thousands of kids who have gone on to use it. I know my own 2 boys have been using it every day, and it's provided relief in our own home. So I know from hearing from lots of other families, it's provided a lot of relief as well, so that families don't need to figure this all out on their own. We're continuing to iterate and improve the modules each week, and we're grateful for all the feedback that we've been getting so that we can make these even stronger for our kids. I do want to note that I've gotten emails from people who live in Henrico and Chesterfield, and as far away as I think Chicago. We got a couple of emails, people who are using RPS at home for their kids, and that's great because it's an open system, and we invite anybody who would like to use it to use it. And again, it's really due to the work of Dr. Epp and her team, and all of our teachers and other staff who have been recording videos and gathering materials. It's really been a hugely collaborative effort. So grateful to everybody who's been a part of that. Obviously, you can only access that if you have a computer and internet access, which is why that distribution is so critical. Again, Dr. Epp and her team have taken the lead on putting this all together, and then Dr. Harris and her team working to get it all out. We have distributed computers to our seniors and our 11th graders. Tomorrow is 10th graders, and then Thursday is 9th graders. Then we'll move on to middle school and elementary school. So that work is continuing. As I've shared before, we're largely constrained by the capacity of TIG, our partner who configures all the computers. They only have so much bandwidth, so as soon as they have a batch ready, we get it on the schedule and get them out to kids. But we're, again, really, really grateful to all the volunteers who've stepped up to help, our ITRTs and so many other folks who've helped make that possible. So that is the technology update. And then last, obviously we're going to talk about budget. We're beginning to just think about what does reopening look like? How could we get our schools ready from a physical perspective? How do we provide the social and emotional supports for teachers and for kids? And what are the academic interventions and supports need to look like to make up for lost learning? We know even with the best online learning, there are still going to be gaps. Nothing will ever replace the incredible power that a flesh and blood teacher has who is working with her students each and every day. So obviously we'll bring those thoughts to you as they develop. We don't know when we'll reopen just yet. We still need to see when the virus will peak here in Virginia. We've seen estimates just like you of a peak in May, but we've also seen those UVA estimates that say August. So obviously that's a huge difference and has huge implications for when we would reopen. So it's premature to put any of those stakes in the ground. But again, as soon as we get more clarity, we do want to make sure that we discuss in depth the plans for what a reopening and what a very different school year next year looks like. So with that, I'll pause, and then Ms. Owen, I don't know if you would like me to have Dr. Harris and Dr. Epp go now, or we should go through each of the items, whatever you would like.
Yes, we'll move through the items as Ms. Wilson has it. Which one is next? Is the update on Chromebook distribution and online learning? Ms. Wilson, is that what you have next?
No, ma'am, I'm sorry. It was the update on a partnership with J. Sargent Reynolds, and then everything that was added as the agenda was amended is placed after that. Or if you want to move that up and move J. Sargent Reynolds last.
Yeah, move J. Sargent Reynolds last, because these are all part of,
that's fine.
Yeah. So which one of them comes next?
Chromebooks.
Okay, so Dr. App. Dr. App.
She lost her internet connection. So Jason, she's waiting for you to let her back in. So I think she's in the waiting area.
See, we need universal internet.
That's her at the bottom. So she should be back if you wanted to tee it up again, Linda.
Okay. Dr. App, we would like to have, if you have anything to add about Chromebook distribution and online learning.
Sure. Chromebook, in terms of Chromebook distribution, we began that early last week, starting with our high school seniors. And so last week we distributed Chromebooks to all of our seniors who requested a Chromebook and or a hotspot, and as well as juniors. And tomorrow we'll begin with sophomores, so and then Thursday with freshmen. So by the end of this week, we will have distributed Chromebooks and hotspots to all of our all of our high school students, and then we'll be moving quickly into the middle through pre-K through 8. Our time factor is we've received the Chromebooks from the initial budget transfer, as well as our technology partner has gone and collected existing Chromebooks. Our time constraint is the amount of capacity it takes to configure the devices, get them tagged and inventoried and ready for deployment. And we do that through Technology Integration Group, which is one of our major partners. Other school systems use them, Henrico and others, and they've been wonderful. But they, like everyone else, they are suffering from folks who are sick, limited staff, and et cetera. So they are working as fast as they can. But at this point, we're really limited to a timeline based on how quickly devices can be prepared for deployment. But we do expect over the next 2 weeks to, significantly ramp up. Thus far, as of after tomorrow, we will have distributed about 1,700, 1,700 laptop Chromebooks as of tomorrow afternoon, assuming all of our sophomore show up. So we're very excited about that, and grateful for our volunteers and staff at the high school that helped us accelerate that. In terms of RPS at home, we are into our 3rd week, which is hard to believe, and we've continued to receive positive feedback. Our team is continuing to think about ways to make the content engaging, to keep kids coming back. And so we know we have several more weeks of school left. And so our instructional team is continuing to think innovatively about adjustments. And so feedback has been, we welcome feedback, which helps us think about ways to improve or strengthen what we're offering. What I'm really excited about that went live over a week ago is our RPS at Home in Espanol. So the entire RPS at Home is the entire interface is available in Spanish. So it's not just a separate page for Spanish with some information. All the information is available in Spanish. And so we're really excited about that. We're excited about our on-demand tutoring that all students have access to. And then our high school courses, again, initially launched over a week ago, and then last week, our electives, CTE courses, and our middle school students who are taking high school credit courses got access to that last week as well. As of Friday, we had over 8,000 enrollments in high school courses alone. So just it's clear that students are eager to get in there and work on their studies. And so we're really proud of our students for that. And then I think the last headline is we've ramped up our work in support of our students with IEPs. So we have, in addition to RPS at Home, having accommodations built in, including on some of our videos, you might have seen closed captioning or sign language for students who need that. And on-demand tutoring, again, is available for all students. But we've worked with one of our partners to contact, last week they contacted over 1,600 families to offer a set of accommodations and services and to get those scheduled virtually. And as of Friday morning, we had about 400 families sign up for those specialized virtual services. Our related services providers in terms of speech and speech will continue virtually. For other things like occupational therapy or physical therapy, we have consultations. They're having consultations with families based on their schedules. And so we're continuing to go through and make sure we've connected and contacted every family. But I would say overall, we've tried to think of land, air, and sea in terms of outreach, and happy to take any questions.
All right. First, we have Ms. Cosby and then Ms. Gibson.
Thank you. And thank you all for the quick work that you've done. I know it has been a Herculean task, and kudos to you all for stepping up to the plate. I have a couple of questions. One, I'm going to go to at RPS at Home. How are we able to, or are we able to at this point, how are we able to track the students who have logged on? So how can we tell per school the percentage of participation?
So for, oh, sorry, you want to go ahead?
That's one question. You can answer.
Okay. For pre-K-8, we cannot track logging on to RPS at Home writ large by student or by school. We can track how many clicks there are on each grade level and each day, you know, of the schedule. So we can look at that, make some assumptions about grade level. But so we have been sharing some of that with our principals so that they could do targeted outreach of grade levels at least. What we are looking at trying to do is some of our subscription-based, some of our existing instructional software is built into the playlists. And so we can look at, for example, iReady or Reflex or Gizmos. So we can look at students who are logging into that because those are associated with their usernames. So we can look at that data. We have not yet done that. Right now we're looking at kind of trends by grade level. And then that'll be the next thing, is to start parsing that out by school. Our emphasis, we can look at that for high school because of it requires an individual login for their coursework for most of their courses. And again, because the high school courses are really, you know, I would say high stakes because it requires completion for successful completion to award credit. That's where our efforts have been initially. So we are providing, for high school, we're providing our counselors and principals reports. We're basically bumping their schedule that they were in against their enrollment in our platform, and flagging for our counselors and principals any students that are not fully enrolled in their courses that they need credit for, so that they can do more targeted outreach. So we're a little bit more able to be sophisticated on the high school side, and looking into some alternative ways to track that on the elementary and middle school side.
Okay. And so you said that is on the radar for us to be able to look at that going forward.
Yeah, at least partially. We won't be able to get a full view, but with the software that's embedded in some of the daily lessons, we'll be able to get a partial view.
Okay. And the reason why I asked is because I think now more so than ever is when we will start to see significant equity gaps. And I'm concerned and just want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to make sure all of our students remain engaged in some form or fashion, because that's what we're about, learning and educating our students.
Absolutely.
And also you talked about Chromebooks, and you said that you have a list of students who have requested the Chromebook and or hotspot.
Yes.
So how have we, just if you can refresh my memory, how have we advertised? How do you go about requesting this? Is it just something that's been, the request, is it just something that's been web-based? How many robocalls did we do just to remind people, hey, if you need this, call this number, etc.?
Sure. So first, just absolutely agree with you on the equity front. And we, on our weekly calls, we are with principals and my team, we're discussing strategies for keeping students engaged and incentivizing learning, even though, you know, we're not technically grading work. There are principals that are doing all kinds of innovative things. And so we've been sharing that with one another. And so definitely hear you, and going to continue to push to keep that engagement up. In terms of the outreach for technology needs, that was distributed through all of our traditional means, through RPS Direct, through social media, through parent links, through robocalls. We had each school also do their own direct outreach via their social media. We did flyers for the food distribution sites. And Dr. Harris and her team did a lot to identify students that might be more vulnerable, and did outreach there, in particular our students who are have unstable housing and the like. Dr. Harris, I don't know if you want to add anything else. I know you guys did a ton. You want to share some of what your team helped us do?
Yeah, I would also shout out to our principals who teams have teachers who volunteered to directly follow up with families. We additionally made over 800 phone calls, especially to our families who were experiencing housing transition. And we knew may need some support. Also in the past 3 weeks, we really utilized both TV and radio, having over 28 radio interviews. Almost about half of those have also been on Spanish radio, in addition to different news spots where we've had Superintendent Cameras, Dr. Epp, myself, all just continue to spread the word about making sure people had access. And then many of those calls and those follow-up are continuing to happen on a daily basis.
Great. I would just ask, do we have a list? And I can't help but go back school by school. Do we have a list of, let's say, how many have requested per school? So, you know, we know at Woodville we have 100 requests. I know we can't get to them right now, but when you hit the kindergarten level and the pre-K level, but do you all have that list?
Yes.
And compare it to the total student population at that school?
Yes. And we've given principals those lists so they can see and check against students that they know their students best, and they can check against who might not yet be aware. And I think the main thing is it helps us inform the numbers, but I think, like, if you know a family that needs a Chromebook, it's helpful if they indicate the survey, because then we have their contact information that's most current, and we can send an email or a robocall when distribution goes out. For example, the Office of Engagement was able to send an email to everybody who requested a device, including prior to Friday's distribution, all the high school juniors who did so. So we had, I mean, people were there right away, ready to go. And so we had really great turnout. And but if somebody hasn't gotten to the survey, that's okay. They could still get a Chromebook or a hotspot. They could take the survey, but also if they look at the schedule and they see when their school is up, we don't want them to not come because they didn't fill out the survey, I guess is the message. But filling out the survey gives us their contact info so we can let them know when distribution is occurring.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ms. Owen.
Okay. Now we have Ms. Gibson, followed by Ms. Page, Ms. Dorr, Mr. Barlow, and Ms. Burke.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I was hoping to get a little bit more information just in terms of the distribution process and the number of laptops, because it seems like a gargantuan, I guess that's the way you pronounce it, I'm not sure, task. So if 17 laptops have been distributed now, are those all the laptops that are existing laptops and that the schools already have? And I guess, what is the feasibility, or, in terms of getting all of those laptops to students in time to be able to take advantage of the coursework by the end of the school year? And then I also wanted to follow up in terms of the question on those students with IEPs. What type of assistive technology needs are we able to get out, and how are we ensuring that those students with IEPs have the technology that's built into their plans? And then the third question is just one relative to staff professional development. Has there been thought in terms of what RPS at home looks like for teachers and other staff members? As obvious, this seems like a good time to be able to do that type of learning for staff, and just wanted to know, what the thinking is on that right now.
Sure. So as of tomorrow, we will have gone through 1,700 laptops, Chromebooks, and another 700 are slated for Thursday. Excuse me. I got to remember what day it is. So we are on a kind of week-to-week basis, as I shared with our technology partner, and as they have the devices that we have in stock, as well the ones that we had on hand as well. They began doing that, and they began collecting those when we knew school was going to be out. So they started that well before we placed the additional order from the budget transfer that you all approved. We then ordered those, and those I believe just came in. And so what has to happen with both sets is they have to be configured to work within our infrastructure and within our network, and they have to be inventoried and tagged, and then sent out to the distribution sites. So every couple of days, our technology partner tells us how many they have ready, and we then look at our distribution numbers, and that's how we've sort of prioritized and taken the approach we have. So we do anticipate the numbers ramping up week to week. As I shared in my update, it's hard to predict because they too are dealing with staffing limitations and shipping delays and things like that. So they are working as fast as they can. We're in conversations about if there's any way to augment those services with other providers. The tricky thing is there's a group that knows our system and they know it well, and so they're really efficient. It's just the numbers are huge. So the hotspots are a different story. Those don't really need to be configured. Thanks to Parks and Rec, we were able to get 2,000 SIM cards replaced and in there, which was an incredible feat. The Parks and Rec staff have been helpful. So our hotspots are a little bit easier to get ready to deploy. So it's something that, to your question, I don't have a hard answer. I just know that every day I'm asking for updates about 3 times a day to figure out if there's any way to accelerate anything. So we're essentially just trying as fast as we can, but we don't have firm answers. That's why we did prioritize high school though, because those students, in terms of impact on credit, we feel like they have to have that. And while we want all of our students to have devices, we had to prioritize there. In terms of students with IEPs, like I said, we have between our special education staff and our partners, the people who provide the state with Virginia IEP Online have been helping us do outreach to every family with an IEP. If a student had assistive technology in school, that technology is being picked up and taken to their home. That's why their related services providers are having consults with families to see what they need and what their schedule needs to look like. And again, the consults that we've had with over, again, I said we called 1,600 families last week, and about 400 as of Friday had already set up their schedule for services. So we're continuing to do that. I feel really good about the efforts we've made on that front. I dare say we're well out ahead. My director here is texting me. She's listening in, I'm sure. Yes, and so that's partly our assistive technology team. We have people who do that, connect with our related service providers to make sure we get that equipment from the school and get it to the home. And then I would just say, if there's a student with an IEP who needs additional services that can be done remotely or virtually, to please reach out to, let the principal know, or you can reach out to my office and we can make sure that if you haven't been contacted and you need something, we can make sure that we provide it. And then there was a third question. I'm sorry, I forgot it.
That was specific to staff professional development.
So right now we've done, actually our exceptional education department has done the most amount of virtual professional learning during the closure. They've been able to turnkey a lot of that work. Whereas our core curriculum and instruction team has really been all in on RPS at home. So there has been no capacity to, do that. We have, of course, advertised opportunities. There's tons of free professional development out there right now that's being provided virtually. But we are not yet at a place where we're not ready to pivot there yet. We still have a lot of work to do around RPS at home, and we have a lot of work to do to prepare for multiple contingencies in terms of summer school virtually, whether the school year will open, whether the school year will not open. So I think if there's a demand from teachers for certain types of learning, I certainly would love to hear that, and we can talk with our teacher advisory council about that. But right now we don't have plans to launch anything significant. And I would say part of that too is our RPS at home strategy was designed to be really sensitive to teachers' demands, and knowing that everybody has a really unique situation at home and we couldn't possibly plan for those dynamics. We want to be very careful about assuming that our teachers are able to focus and be on hand, which is why we did RPS at home the way we did. So many of our teachers have continued to go above and beyond for their kiddos, but some are just not able to because of their circumstances. And so I think, I feel like we've tried to minimize any pressure or stress on our teachers, given how much they're dealing with, and frankly, how much they're going to have to deal with when we come back from school, when we come back from all of this. But open to PD, if that's a demand, we can certainly take a look at it.
Okay, thank you. So Ms. Page, then Ms. Dorr, Mr. Barlow, Ms. Burke. Ms. Page?
Yes. So first, excuse me, I just would like to thank, the administration for a job well done with the pandemic, just with the distribution of the meals, the Chromebooks. You all have done a phenomenal job. So my questions, I have several questions. And the first one, and this goes back to something that Ms. Cosby said about student contact. Is there some type of alert, or do we have some students on our radar that our principals and teachers know if they have not heard from them, that they need to be contacted, regarding student learning and their social well-being? Dr. Elk can speak to that if she, she has some information.
Sure.
I'm curious.
Thank you. Well, I think many of our teachers have been doing outreach consistently since this all started, as have our principals in terms of bringing small teams together. The Office of Engagement, as Dr. Harris shared, has done targeted outreach for certain vulnerable students, and and then Mr. Hughes' team and Angela Jones's team, they are also looking at ways. They've been talking about ways to utilize, like looping in our social workers and things like that. They've been doing a lot of that on their own. And I think now we're ready for the next phase of sort of really targeted and strategic outreach to make sure we're hitting everyone. So I know those conversations are in play. I don't know if anybody else from the leadership team wants to add there.
Okay, then Ms. Dorr,
followed
by Mr.
Madam
Barlow.
Chair, I just have another question.
Okay.
So I was waiting on someone from the leadership to have another response, but what Dr. Elk said, that's great. But my next question, so once we complete the distribution of the Chromebooks and hotspots for our high school students, what is the plan for our middle and elementary schools? What is the rollout plan, distribution plan for them? Is it similar or, the same approach?
I would say it's Similar in that we want it to be as seamless as possible, but we'll get updated numbers. Again, we expect higher numbers next week for distribution.
Chief Academic Officer.
Oh, and so we don't yet know. We're evaluating several options ranging from, on the one hand, it's more efficient to stay at the sites we've been distributing from. On the other hand, you know, we want families to go to the site that they're the most comfortable with and the site that's the closest to them. So we're kind of weighing the trade-offs in terms of time from our technology team. And then we are trying to think of a way that's fair and equitable, but we're going to have to prioritize, you know, sites or locations somehow. We certainly are looking at families who have multiple kids in the household, not wanting them to have to come out multiple times.
Right.
So those are some things we're considering. We just, by the middle of this week, we'll have more details on the rest of the distribution. You know, high school is simple to prioritize because you can kind of make sense of it, whereas everybody else has the need. And so we're just trying to think about the most fair and efficient process. So not sure yet.
Okay. So Madam Chair, when that information is ready, I think it would be helpful that the board receives an update on how the Chromebooks and hotspots will be distributed to our middle and elementary school students.
Okay, thank you. And now Ms. Dorr, then Mr. Barlow, Ms. Burke.
Hello. First, I would be remiss if I didn't say thank you to the administration for a truly tremendous undertaking. I know that you guys are in the trenches every day, and I'm very grateful to your hard work, and I've heard countless text messages and emails and comments of positive praise for you all on all fronts, food delivery, on e-learning, on you name it. So thank you all very, very, very much. And please continue to let us know how we can support you during these trying times. I have a quick question. Volunteering. Some people are not as comfortable with being in a setting with other people and but are willing and interested in helping. So if you don't want to take time during today's meeting to articulate that, it would be helpful in an RPS Direct to just reiterate how people can plug in if they, to help them visualize what food distribution looks like. Because I think a lot of people, I've heard feedback that people are scared about helping with food distribution. We certainly don't want to encourage people to, we want to encourage people to shelter in place as much as possible. But I think some folks are craving different ways to plug in or to understand what it looks like to plug in. So I don't need to take a lot of board time to talk about that if you guys just want to address it in a future communication, but I am hearing a couple of questions about that.
Okay, Mr. Barlow and then Ms. Burke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I'm largely going to echo some of what you've heard before with from a gratitude perspective. I just want to say thank you to the administration, to all the volunteers, to our teachers and our just incredible central office staff for organizing a really dramatic shift in the nature of this organization in a relatively short time period. To go from a fully operating school system to a food distribution and IT distribution network and e-learning platform is no small task, and to have done it as swiftly as we did is really a testament to the leadership of our central office as well. I am curious to know, in particular, I've heard varied reviews as we do with many things in the district. Some people are happier with certain initiatives than others. I've certainly heard from folks who have been more excited about RPS at home than others, but I am curious to know if we are systemically tracking or collecting feedback related to our e-learning efforts in particular, to continue to fine-tune them, understanding we only have so much time left in the school year, but next year may look a lot different than a normal school year as well.
Yes, so great, thank you, and a great question. As I said, I know we're looking to do some keeping things fresh, and we've certainly kept track of feedback we've received one-off. I definitely think we can look at just doing, again, some way to collect more formal feedback before we develop the next sort of month out of modules. So I'll talk with my curriculum and instruction team and see what's the most efficient way to do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Burke?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you so much. I too would like to thank Central Administration for their outpouring of meeting the needs of our students. And I stated this during our last meeting, but I've heard so much from so many people in the community, how much they appreciate receiving the food. This morning, pouring down rain, I saw one of the principals who hasn't missed a day of food distribution with the school bus. Her car was parked there at one of the stops, so she goes from stop to stop. So please, as Mr. Cameras, as you and your team communicate with the administration, school level, whatever, please thank them. I'm also appreciative of principals that have called along with their assistant principals or counselors. They've called student by student, family by family. And it was shared with me today from Northern Virginia, a former Richmond Public Schools teacher. She gave us kudos because she stated that our at-home learning information was, say this correctly, was so well done. So oftentimes the grass isn't greener otherwise. Mm-hmm. But the thinking was because of the resources that were there in place that that particular area, Northern Virginia County, would be in a different position. Also with the food distribution there, because of what Ms. Doer stated as well, some people are not comfortable. Some areas, and I'm sure we've read this on our school board, Virginia School Board Association's website, there are some localities that have stopped the food distribution because of the discomfort. So I'm glad to hear from you all that we will continue that until this is all done, and our families do appreciate it. What my question is, and I think we've talked around it, I would really like to know with the distribution of the, and that was so well done, just watching that with the person standing outside with the tables in place and the students just driving up and giving you all the forms, very, very well organized. I would like to know at some point, not tonight, of course, for instance, as I think someone mentioned it earlier, most of the Chromebooks and hotspots, what are the numbers in each of the districts? Mm-hmm. For instance, in the 9th district, in the 7th district, I know how many students that we have. So at some point that data to be able to see, because there may be still a family or two, because a lot of families are being displaced right now. And I'm so happy those people who are distributing food and the Chromebooks haven't turned any child behind. So I would like to know at some point what the distribution numbers are. But I must say that parents, community persons, the students, they have been so appreciative. So thank you on behalf of our students in RPS. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Burke. Okay, Ms. Wilson, which one do we move to now?
Receive an update on COVID-19 education planning.
What?
I think
that part of the Chromebook.
Yeah, I think I did that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now we had one about the cleaning of schools, one about transportation, and then update on new schools.
Yes,
So
construction.
which one now?
Update on transportation pay concerns.
Yes. I'm not sure what the particular concerns were. So if I think Ms. Gibson raised that, if you could share what those were, perhaps we can address them.
Yes. Sorry, do you want me to speak now?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. I mean, I've heard from several of our bus drivers that the pay issues that we discussed earlier in the year are still ongoing, and so obviously it's important that our folks are paid on time. And I wanted to find out what is being done to ensure that those paychecks are going out in a timely manner.
Yeah, if there is a specific instance, I would ask if folks could send that to me directly. I have not heard of any such issues. As far as I know, the pay has been going out under a normal timeline. Folks email me every day with pay issues, and to be honest, I have not received any from bus drivers. So if there is an employee who's having an issue, I would just ask if you could let me know the name or have them contact me directly. We'll get on that right away.
Thank you.
Okay, then maybe the cleaning of schools next, Ms. Wilson?
Okay, that's fine.
Sure. So we are not doing cleaning right now. We're going to wait until we know when we'll reopen, and then we'll do a disinfectant and deep cleaning of all of our campuses. We don't think it makes sense to do that now, as it's very unpredictable when we'll open. We might need to access the buildings, and then we'd have to do it all again. So of course, we're maintaining clean areas for the food distribution, but beyond that, we're not doing any mass cleaning at this point.
Dr. Sapini has a question.
Yes. Has any cleaning supplies been purchased? If so, how much of the amount that was allotted has been spent to go towards that?
A significant amount was used earlier on. I don't have the exact amount, but I think Michelle might have that.
325,000 of the initial 550,000 has already been spent on supplies, and the facilities team is getting me a final quote this week for not only cleaning supplies, but also to upgrade some of our cleaning equipment to make sure that the cleaning, when done, is improved.
Are you finished, Ms. Udesco? Okay. Dr. Sapini, are you good? Or...
I guess I am.
All right, Ms. Burke.
Thank you, Ms. Owen, Madam Chair. Excuse me. Regarding the cleaning of the buildings, I would like to see as we move forward, and I'm suggesting this now, and I'll suggest that it's added to an agenda later as a line item per se, that we have, I don't know what the process is that's in place currently for making sure our buildings are clean. Is it a monthly inspection? Is it a weekly inspection? Who inspects the buildings? But we must have that documentation in place. And I want to see it, number one, because we cannot afford to let anybody, once we clean up, we might get comfortable. Then also looking at the amount of staff and the maintenance crew that's in the school. But I would like to see in place, Madam Chair and fellow board members, a balance, a point of which we check and make sure that our buildings are clean. Years ago, we used to have forms with that, so I hope that there's an opportunity to revisit that. But there needs to be in place a checklist, some form of a record or whatever, that buildings are being checked. The principal is aware of it, crew chief is aware of it. That will also help us to improve and purchase what we need to purchase. But they're also as a board, I'm not micromanaging, but I need to see it because I don't want us to slip back once we get settled and get back into our routines. And we're right back with having spaces and areas that are not kept clean as they should be. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Cosby. Ms. Cosby.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to support my colleague, Ms. Burke, in her statements. There used to be a checklist, and it was something that was performed throughout the summer. And it was reviewed by actually several members of cabinet. And it was shared with the school board in terms of the progress. And so I agree that we do need to see the template for the form. That would be great to see within the next couple of months.
Okay.
Ms. Owen, you're on mute.
Yep, I got it. Thank you, Mr. Barlow. I have update on new schools and something about senior graduation. Do we know what we're going to do about that?
On the new schools, the construction remains on track. Obviously, this week is going to be a very rainy one, so that might affect a few things, but a lot of the work now is internal. It's not external. So as of now, we are still on track. There's not a lot of wiggle room left in the schedule, but again, the teams are making progress. And if you drive by, you'll see what look like schools, and it's thrilling to see. Ms. Owen, what was the second question?
Graduation.
We don't have alternative plans yet, but we're looking at possibilities for the summer and maybe even the fall. There's really a couple of different paths we can go on this. One is a traditional in-person graduation that we just do later, and we invite families and kids back to do that. Or something of a virtual nature in the short term. So we're working on a couple of different ideas. We're getting lots of great input from the community, teachers, families, kids, and also trying to think about prom as well. As we know, that's such a big moment in kids' lives. So nothing concrete yet, but we're working through lots of different ideas.
Okay, Mr. Jonathan, Mr. Young.
Hey, Linda, sorry, I'm having some difficulty with the chat. It's a conspiracy, I tell you. No, I just had a really quick inquiry relevant to the preceding topic, but I was unable to use the chat, specifically cleaning buildings, and I'd concur with a lot of what was said, so I'm not going to belabor that point. But my question does regard what are we doing in the interim to address non-COVID-19 cleanliness, i.e. Using opportunity to, for example, deep clean the floors. And one of my schools has consistently had problem with the floors and the tile. And is there an opportunity to do some of that deep cleaning, not pertinent to the virus, but just general cleaning between now and prayerfully whenever we can reopen? Thank you.
Should I?
Mr. Camrus?
Yes.
I mean, I realize that the person who's really in charge of this is on paternity leave. So it might be that we can really address this when he's back with us, you know? But,
sure. And again, I'll just say given everything that's going on, we're trying to minimize people being in our buildings, one. Two, we have as you know, we're about to have a budget discussion, a finite amount of money. And so don't want to be in a position of having to do something, but then having to do it again because of people being in the buildings and whatnot. And then third, I'd say, many of our custodians are older in age, are in high risk categories themselves, and so hesitant to put a lot of new work on them at this time. But look, we're gonna put together a schedule to address, again, both the disinfectant and the deep cleaning. And we also need to get some quotes to see how much it would all cost. It's one of the reasons, as we'll talk about in a minute, I think it's, excuse me, important that we reserve that stimulus money for all those kinds of costs, because I do think they're going to be quite significant.
Okay, and so Dr. Sapini and then Mr. Barlow.
Yes. Again, pertaining to the buildings, okay. Considering there's been no cleaning done, do you know the state of the building, considering that they are empty right now, as far as security or anything else that may be pertinent, as the buildings are empty at this point?
Yes, we have custodians do, or administrators do a twice a week check of the building, all of our buildings. So we're looking for any issues that might arise to make sure that they're addressed.
Okay, so.
Will there be a report coming with that to let us know as far as, any issues with security? Because I know that obviously sometimes when buildings are empty, whether in the summertime or whatever have you, whether people in the community or, children or whoever may try to enter the buildings for any reason.
Certainly if there was unauthorized access to the buildings, I would let the board know, but to my knowledge, there has not been any thus far.
Thank you.
Mr. Barlow and then Ms. Cosby.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is not a cleaning question. I am curious, I just got a great question from a member of the public about kindergarten registration and what that process might look like. I know it's maybe not necessarily been top of mind since we're not exactly sure what the upcoming school year will look like. But I know that just communication efforts and receiving appropriate documents and things of that nature can be quite a process. So I am curious to know whether there are early thoughts about how that will be handled.
Yes, it's very much top of mind. We're going live April 30th with the rest of the state. We're going to use our Enroll RPS platform, which is the same platform as the open enrollment and specialty school process that we used this year for the first time. It will allow families to upload documents electronically. You can take a picture on your phone, that sort of thing. And we will have opportunities, whether it's computers or iPads, at our food distribution site so that families who may have difficulty getting online and doing it themselves can get some assistance to register at those sites. But I'm glad to have Dr. Epp and Dr. Harris share any more context or details on that.
The only thing I'll add is that we were excited to launch today a family support line that's in both English and Spanish. When you call, one of the options is about kindergarten or pre-K registration, and it takes you to a direct line of that team who's available in English and Spanish to walk any family through the process. So we launched it today in Superintendent's RPS Direct. I'll also send the flyer to all board members so you can share broadly, but I think that's another just universal way to make sure we can help people walk them through the process.
Dr. Harris, do you want to share the number on the live stream?
Yes, I'll share it on the live stream.
You want to share it now?
Oh, I thought you meant in the chat. Sorry. I need to pull it up, but I'll give it, I'll share it in a second.
Okay.
While she's looking for that, I would just like to say to my colleagues, it's about 9 o'clock. We've been at this for 3 hours and we've still got some important things to talk about. So let's try and be considerate of all of us. Okay?
Yeah.
All right. If you got it, Ms. Harris?
Yes,
Dr.
sorry about
Harris?
that. The number is 804-780-6195. Again, that's 804-780-6195. Any family can call that number or connect us through any platforms. And we hope this will just be a more streamlined way for any family, regardless of language, to get the support that they need. And I'll also share it with everyone via email.
All right, so now Ms. Cosby, then Ms. Dorr. I'm sorry, Ms. Gibson, I missed you. Why don't you go first? So Ms. Gibson, then Ms. Cosby, then Ms. Dorr.
I mean, I'm fine. I noted that we can keep going.
Okay, then Ms. Cosby, then Ms. Dorr.
Just a quick question, going back to our discussion about senior graduation. I really wanted to know how many seniors are on track to graduate.
We don't have a number available right now, but Dr. Epp can certainly provide an update on graduation progress at an upcoming meeting. Our counselors are working literally student by student with our seniors to make sure that they complete the modules for their credit. But I just don't have the data at hand this evening. Can certainly do that at an upcoming meeting.
Okay, Ms. Dorr.
You're on mute.
I'm on mute.
Ms. Doris.
Oh.
Wanted to speak, so I'll let her, if it's okay. I just wanted to flag that she has been trying to speak. Dawn, do you want to say something? You're on mute.
Yes. This question may have already been answered in the frequently asked questions regarding like community service for our say IB and our specialty schools. Has the requirement for community service hours been waived? And if this is something already has been addressed in the frequently asked questions, can refer to that section.
Yeah, there's a section on the RPS Direct. I'm sorry, Ms. Owen. Should I go ahead and answer? Okay. There's a section on the RPS at home site for AP and IB and dual enrollment questions specifically. I'm not sure that it addresses the community service requirement, but most of the peripheral requirements, including the exams for IB, are waived if you're pursuing the IB certificate or diploma. But I would have students reach out directly to their IB coordinator or Principal Sears. They've been doing town halls, but there is information on RPS at home.
So again, Dr. Ebb, so the information regarding community service hours, students need to contact the principals?
Well, I would just say, so I'm speaking specifically for seniors as it relates. I would say for all students outside of seniors, yes, you should assume that's the case. For seniors who were pursuing an IB diploma or certificate of completion, I know that IB has made many accommodations and changes, but it's also my understanding that for seniors, all of that paperwork would have been submitted by March 15th anyway. So if a senior is pursuing that route, they likely already completed that.
Okay.
But if they haven't and they're not sure, they can certainly reach out to Ms. Johnson or Ms. Sears, who have the details on IBO.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So now we go back to receive information on time-sensitive items regarding partnerships with J. Sargent Reynolds Community College. Mr. Camrus?
Thank you, Ms. Owen. As was reported in the RTD, but well beyond my desire, the Vacant Property Committee has explored the possibility of some uses for the Altria building that we have on Maury Street. And one of those is, as we have discussed, is potentially a high-tech career and tech standalone high school. We had very nascent conversations with J. Sargent Reynolds about potentially partnering with us as they wanted to develop a high-tech program themselves and were looking for a space. Obviously, there's much to be discussed about this, but one of the things that Dr. Pando at J. Sarge had reached out to me about is they want to move forward, and they understand that obviously we're dealing with the pandemic right now and can't really make decisions, but they were wondering if we would be open to exploring some sort of lease agreement for part of the building so they could potentially begin doing their work on a sooner timeline. And so I wanted to bring this to the board to see if the board was at least okay with us beginning to explore that further. We're not signing anything tonight or agreeing to anything tonight. I just wanted to see if there was a consensus to explore that further with J. Sarge. You know, from my conversations with Dr. Pando, RPS is their number one, is the number one organization they want to partner with. We largely serve the same families. But if this is not a possibility for them, they'll obviously need to seek space elsewhere, and they would, of course, prefer not to do that. I will add this could potentially be a revenue stream for us, so there's that as well. So in short, I'm just looking for to see if there's a general consensus that it makes sense to have further conversations, explore what an agreement might look like, and of course, I would bring that back to the board for consideration and ultimate approval.
All right, well, Ms. Wilson, will you check in with each member of the board to see if people are okay with exploring this possibility?
Okay. And when would you like a response back by?
Right now.
Oh, I'm sorry. So, I'm sorry.
Just if people are okay with exploring the possibility.
Okay. Mr. Barlow, are you okay?
Yes.
How do I do a thumbs up?
I'm sorry?
I can't see everybody at once. I can't see everybody at once.
Yeah. Yes.
Ms. Gibson, are you okay?
That's fine.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear her.
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, Mr. Young, are you okay with that?
I am enthusiastically supportive of it.
Dr. Sapini? Are you okay with it, Dr. Sapini? You still there? How about you, Ms. Cosby?
Yes.
Ms. Page?
Yes, I'm excited about the opportunity, especially the location.
Okay.
Opportunity for our students.
Ms. Burke, are you okay with that?
Absolutely, yes. Thank you.
And Ms. Owen?
Yes. And Dr. Sapini, you're on mute. Okay. Well, I think that's a consensus.
Thank you. I appreciate your support. I will report back soon.
Okay. So now, where are we? Receive the budget updates.
Okay, I'm going to do screen sharing again so I can walk through the presentations if that is okay with everybody.
Yes.
Give me 1 second here. Okay, everybody can see that?
Yeah.
All right. So let me walk everybody through the presentation. I'm going to start with the revenue overview. In blue here is the FY20 revenue, starting with the fund balance, then city revenue, then state revenue, federal and other revenue. Just to be clear, this federal revenue, this is not including our federal grants. Remember, we're just talking about our general fund revenue, not our special revenue. So not in here is title and IDEA and things of that nature. That's why the number is fairly small. And then other is just things like facility rentals and other small revenue sources. Then moving over to the green, that next column, this is the allocation that we were expecting before the virus hit. This is the allocation we were expecting for next year, for FY21. So you'll see there about almost 348 million. And then the next green column shows the change from FY20 to what we were expecting to get before the virus. So you can see before the virus hit, we were expecting to get about $37 million in new revenue for next year. Moving over to the orange, this shares now where are we now. So you'll see we went from an expected 347 million to now about 330 million. What happened is, as you know, the city cut back and the state cut back because of the virus and the impact that it has had on revenue in so many different places. And so now, whereas we were expecting about 37 million in new revenue, we're now expecting about 19.4 million in new revenue. So I want to be clear, we're still up, which is amazing given that we are dealing with this global pandemic. And I think that speaks to both the governor and the mayor's leadership in making some tough calls to try to protect schools as much as possible. It's just that we're up a lot less than we thought. Let me keep going and then take questions. Turning to the expenditure side, what I'm showing here is what the board approved for the FY21 budget that was sent on to the mayor and then to council. Obviously, this is not our adopted budget, it's what was approved. We'll go through the process now of figuring out what to ultimately adopt. As you'll see, 12.3 million in salaries and benefits. The largest driver there is the 4% raise. 22 million for Dreams for RPS. As you remember, over 125, I think it is, more teachers and support staff. And then our additional needs and adjustments category, about 9 million. So the board approved budget called for about $44 million in new spending. One thing I do want to note is after the board approved this budget, we then got the initial city numbers. This is before the virus. And that put us at about 37 million in new revenue. So before the virus hit, our approved budget was already 7 million over what we would be able to afford. So we already had a little bit of a shortfall that needed to be addressed. But now with the new revenue numbers as a result of the impact that the virus has had on the economy, here's the summary. we have in this orange box about 19.4 million in new revenue, but the board approved budget has about 44 million in new spending. And so there in red is our current shortfall, about $24.5 million. Now I want to be clear, this does not mean we're cutting or we need to cut 24.5 million from our current budget, our FY20 budget. It's just that we need to reduce the expenditures that we had planned for new items, raises, staff, new staff programs, and such. So that's an important point. I just want to make sure the board understands, but also the public and our staff understands. This does not mean we need to cut 24.5 million out of our current budget. And so I do not want anyone getting concerned about layoffs or anything of that nature. That is not what we're talking about. It's just that the increase for next year is smaller than we expected. And so our new spending has to come down to match our smaller new pot of money. Obviously, folks have heard about the federal stimulus, a rather significant amount of money that was set aside for K-12 education. Fortunately, it's being distributed based on essentially poverty status. And so Richmond, sadly, because of our high poverty, did well with the stimulus. We were getting, it's estimated, a little bit more than $13 million. And that is obviously very helpful, but I do want to be clear, this is one-time money. And so we should, of course, be very careful about how we spend it. Using those funds for new teachers and such would be not ideal from the administration's perspective, because we could be in a position a year from now needing to lay those folks off. So listed here are straight out of the legislation, the 12 possible uses for the stimulus money. As you can see, I'm not going to read through it all. It is rather broad. There are a great number of things we can use the funds for. They're intended, obviously, to be used to deal with the crisis. And so our recommendation, moving on to the next slide, is that we not use the stimulus to try to fill that shortfall for FY21, and instead reserve it really for the things we know we're going to need to do as a result of the virus. So one, disinfecting and deep cleaning all of our schools prior to reopening. We're likely going to need contractor help for that, and the costs will be rather significant. Second, additional PPE, protective equipment for staff and volunteers at our food and technology distribution sites. It is likely that this is going to go on for several more months, and we're going to need more gloves and other supplies. Purchasing additional technology to continue to ensure equity of access to online learning. I do want to note, this is an expense which has long-term benefits in that those devices will be available for our schools when we do reopen, since they're out on loan. So while it is a significant expense now, it has benefit down the road. We're going to need to provide significant social and emotional reentry supports for both our students and staff, and that is going to be quite expensive. In addition, academic interventions, as we've talked about, for any learning loss experienced during the closure. That could be, if we're able to bring folks back, intensive summer support, could be extended year, could be extended day, and paying for that extra time is going to be quite expensive. We also should reserve funds for the possibility, as tragic as this may sound, we could potentially open up and then need to close again if infection rates were to rise in the fall or winter. And so we would want to be prepared with that. And then there are just so many unknowns at this point that we think it would be prudent to reserve some portion of those funds for eventualities that we just haven't considered just yet. Second, we wanted to try to begin tonight to look at some of the big ticket items in the budget. So I pulled the list of everything that was $500,000 or more in terms of new spending, and to try to get a sense from the board if there's a consensus about where to make reductions and generally how much. I do want to be clear, of course, we're going to have to go through every line of new spending to bring us down from that 44 million in new spending to about 19.4 million. But given how much we have to reduce, 24.5 million, we thought it might be a good idea just to start with some of those big pots. But obviously, we will go through every line ultimately. Then, if we're able to get some consensus on some of the big ticket items, we would take that and look at the line by line and then come back to the board with a line by line proposal to consider at our May 4th meeting, and then hopefully adopt the budget at our May 18th meeting. And we'd love to figure out how to do any other public feedback and other comment so that we could get as much thinking from the community as possible. With that, just briefly, these are the items that we have been discussing before the virus hit that go above that $500,000 threshold. I've just listed a initial recommendation just for consideration. Nothing here is hard and fast. The 1.17% step increase at 1.9 million, we're recommending that we maintain. The 4% raise at 9.4 million. This kills me because I was so excited about being able to provide this to our teachers and staff. I do think we're going to have to revisit this, though, unfortunately, given the very significant reduction that we've seen in our revenue. Increase in healthcare costs, we certainly believe we should maintain the million. I put maintain/increase because there might be increased costs, so we want to explore that just a little bit. Moving on to dreams for RPS, priority 1, we had the 10 additional art, music, language, PE teachers at 815,000. The STEM academies at 2 million. The local match for 15 additional reading specialists, 830,000. The 12 additional advanced placement teachers at 978,000. The 10 additional exceptional education positions also at 978K. The elementary behavior pilot at 740,000. The local match to expand VPI, almost 1.6 million. VPI transportation at 2 million. Just parenthetically, we think there might be a way to change some schedules to significantly reduce the cost here, so we're looking at that. And then the 10 additional special education, exceptional education, I listed that twice. I apologize for that, so you can ignore that second one. For Dreams for RPS, priority 2, the custodian salary increase, the bus operator and monitor salary increase, and the AP decompression. Those were the big ticket items, and you can see our initial recommendations there. Dreams for RPS, priority 3, 5 additional nurses and the 6 behavior specialists that the grant was ending. And again, you can see the recommendations. There's nothing over $500,000 in priority 4. In priority 5, we had an expansion of the equity fund by about 550,000. And then we had 10 additional custodians at $500,000. And then finally, in the additional needs bucket, we had the local match to maximize class size reduction at a little over 2 million. 8 additional middle school positions at 652,000, 20 additional attendance positions, 1.37 million. The non-CIP facility maintenance at 750,000. The 2,000 additional Chromebooks at 660,000. That's one that I think we can easily take off as we have already allocated significant funds and we have the stimulus for that as well. So again, those are just the large buckets. Of course, there's much more to discuss. The other document I did want to just draw everyone's attention to is this spreadsheet, which should look familiar from our discussions. I've taken out a number of columns only to fit this on a screen so that you can see it. Basically, we have each of the items that we've discussed in length The next column here is what was in our FY20 amended budget. And then in the last column, what the FY21 approved change is. So if it's, for example, if we just look at the maintain 10 of the art, music, language, PE teachers and add 10, this is the maintain, and then the 815,000 would be the add. So anywhere you see a number here, that's what we would add. There's a few places where we were subtracting in the FY21 budget, but that gives you a sense of, just as a reminder, everything that we had. So with that, I'll turn it back to Linda and see how you'd like to proceed. Let me know if you want me to leave either document up, oops, sorry, for us to discuss.
Ms. Dorr and then Mr. Barlow.
Great. Thank you for this preliminary read and for your suggestions on how to start having this discussion. I'm happy to weigh in on the 500 plus items once everyone has had a chance to speak. However, I do have a couple of suggestions for the next turn of these documents that I think could help us as a board analyze what's going on with the budget. So one, and you don't have to answer any of this tonight, but just for May 6th or for future communication with the board. But one thing that would be helpful, I think, is understanding a little bit more about the stimulus accounting. So you mentioned that it was pretty broad, and I've read the same, but can we use the stimulus money for one-time things in our 2021 budget? Things that come to mind are our HR overhaul tech system and some of the other like video capability for interviewing, et cetera. Could we use some of the stimulus money to pay for some of those one-time tech items? Related is, if we can't use the stimulus money for that, can we use a fund? Are we going to have a fund balance? And can we use our fund balance for that? And then sort of related to the fund balance is a question about any, and I believe my colleagues have talked about this in the past, but are there any contracts that we're considering suspending because we just can't do the work because classes are not in session? And as a result, there's going to be a positive fund balance that we could reallocate towards some of these one-time items. And then sort of related to that are when you guys showed us, when you, in your spreadsheet of the fiscal year 2021 budget, there were a number of line items that were awaiting council approval. So are those, there were, I think, about 30 or so line items that were awaiting council approval back when we approved the budget. Have those actually been approved? And if not, are those rolling over into fund balance? I just think it would be helpful, I think, to understand sort of the accounting around some of the movement of these one-time items and how that relates to the stimulus and how that relates to our own budget. And then finally, I would be interested in your perspective and the entire team's perspective on the ability to get strategic things done in light of the fact that we've had to really basically deliver 250,000 meals, et cetera. And has any of our strategic plan work been delayed, unfortunately, but understandably so? And what does that mean from a budget perspective, just to help guide us in terms of making cuts? So if we weren't able to get work done on strategic plan item, 2.20 this year, does that mean that we need to carry it over into next year? Would be an unfortunate reality, but certainly an understandable one. And then, sorry, that was a lot of words, but my question is specifically around the local match funding and whether that actually is still a local match coming from the state.
Okay. Mr. Barlow, then Ms. Page, then Ms. Gibson, and then Mr. Young.
I'd certainly like to hear if the administration has any feedback on some of Ms. Dorr's points, and then I'm happy to speak thereafter because I had a question or two that went along those lines.
Would you?
All right, Mr. Camrus.
Okay, sure. I don't have all of the answers to Ms. Doerr's questions, but let me try to tackle them. I took some notes. Can we use the stimulus for one-time things in our 21 budget? I think we can, given how broad the guidance is. And you raised the technology purchase that I think is likely something that could be. That being said, I'm very nervous about how much it is going to cost us next year to do all the things that I listed. I mean, if you think about, let's say we added, you know, a month's worth of time to the calendar, either more days or longer hours. Well, that's a 10% increase in our labor costs. That's millions of dollars that we don't have budgeted anywhere else. And so it gives me a great deal of anxiety to use the stimulus to plug those FY21 holes when I can see massive costs coming down the pike if we're gonna get our kids back even to where they started, let alone further along. Obviously, it's a philosophical question, but I just wanted to be transparent about where I stand on that.
That makes sense.
Fund balance, yes, we could use that for these one-time sorts of things. I will tell you, and this related to your next question, we have just about tapped out every remaining dollar in the strategic plan. So through our reallocations that you have supported and current spend downs or anticipated spend downs, we're just about at zero left in the strategic plan. And that includes everything that originally said awaiting council. So there's not much more to squeeze out of there. We're looking at non-strategic plan buckets, but our initial assessment there is there's not a lot there either. We've already sucked up a good amount, but we're continuing to scrub that and working with Lynn to see if there's anything else so that we have a more decent projection of our fund balance. But I don't think that's going to be a huge source of relief for us. Next, contracts, yes, we've already started to try to deal with those as best as we can. I will note, you know, we're trying to pay everybody we can, and that includes our contracted workers. So our behavior aides, some of our contracted speech pathologists, even some of our contracted transportation, because we did make a commitment to try to pay everyone we possibly could. I will note that is one of the stipulations of the federal stimulus, is that the LEA does everything they can to continue to pay folks. And so there aren't a lot of big number contracts that are outside of personnel. And so we're certainly working through all that and canceling what we can or renegotiating. But the largest contracts are for the personnel that we're trying to continue to pay given our commitment to do so. And perspective on getting strategic plan things done. I mean, yeah, I think, I don't want to do this off the cuff, but I totally hear you. I do want to give you more guidance on what we think we should press pause on and what we think we can move forward with. You'll see in the budget presentation, my recommendation is that we continue to fund the STEM academies. We're continuing to work on those. We want to launch those whenever we reopen. We think for the MLK and the Henderson communities, those are really exciting things, and there's something folks are looking forward to. But there are other parts of the plan that we know we're not going to be able to move forward with. I also want to be very realistic about our capacity to recruit and hire a lot of new people. I'm super excited about Sandra, our new Chief Talent Officer, but she's not starting until July 1st. And so obviously we're going to do everything we can, but in the in the budget that the board approved, there were over, I think, 125 new positions on top of what we already have. And so that also gives me a little bit of anxiety. And so as we're looking towards some reductions in our new spending, it's one of the reasons I did want to highlight where we have a lot of new staff members that would be coming on board, because I think it's going to be, even if we were to fund it and we can't afford it all, I think it would be hard to fill all those new art and music positions, all the new special education positions, all 12 AP positions, and so on. I think that's just going to be tough. But Ms. Dorr, to your point, we'll put together a more concrete recommendation about what in the plan we feel we can move forward and what we need to press pause on. And then on the local match, we're still kind of parsing out all the details of the state budget. Technically what the state did is some things they just flat out cut, but a lot of things they have come up with a term called unallotted, which means they're not saying it's definitely gone, they're just not giving it to us now. And so when they come back in session and see where the budget is, it might come back, but it might not come back. The numbers I'm showing you tonight assume it's not coming back. But we're still digging through all the details of exactly where each of the dollars is coming out. So I'll provide more detail on the match very soon, as soon as we get the additional information on that.
Okay, Mr. Barlow, and then Ms. Page, Ms. Gibson, Mr. Young.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Mr. Cameras, for laying this out for us and for kicking off these discussions. I have to say that receiving these budget documents has been one of the most disheartening things I've seen since I've joined the board. I certainly understand that we're in unprecedented times, but it was clear that although much of Richmond and much of the economy has had recovered from the recession, that Richmond Public Schools hadn't. And it seemed like we were getting ever closer to providing some needs that our school division has, some really important basic things that any school division should be able to provide to their students. So this this pandemic exacerbating the issues that we have in our school district is a very challenging thing to stomach at this point. But thank you for at least getting us to a point where we can begin to have these conversations. I also appreciate the context that you provided to Ms. Dorr's questions on the one-time and stimulus funds. That was largely what I wanted to get some additional feedback on. One thing that you mentioned is leaving a lot of that in contingency, which I agree is an important goal, but I am curious to know how much you're thinking we want to have for reserves as we head into making these decisions, because I definitely want to do anything that we can to preserve proposed pay increases for our staff and a lot of staffing positions, and of course realize that that can be challenging given that those are one-time funds that we're talking about, but anything that we can do to address some of our one-time needs with those funds, I'm sure would go a long way. Of course, it's a tough balancing act, but I thought I'd get some feedback on that.
Yeah, I don't have an exact number, but, I wouldn't want to necessarily keep more than $1 million, $1.5 million of the stimulus in contingency. I think even that may be hard to hold on to. Again, given what I was talking about in terms of extra time, or even some of the quotes we're getting for deep cleaning contracts for our schools could be $1 to $2 million, just that, to disinfect and deep clean, to completely reopen and have our schools be ready for kids. And so, yeah, again, I don't know what the exact number is, but probably not more than $1 million. Of course, I'm heartbroken that we may not be able to do these raises or hire some of those special education teachers. As you said, we were just clawing our way back to get our heads out of the water from before the recession. And now we just got pushed down again. And, all of the inequities that existed before the coronavirus have only gotten worse with the coronavirus. And we know that many of our kids were struggling with so many challenges before the virus hit. Now it's 10 times that. And so, yeah, I mean, it's nothing short of heartbreaking. I'll tell you, I just signed a letter from the Council of Great City Schools with dozens of other urban superintendents calling on the federal government for an additional federal stimulus package for K-12 schools, because I think it's going to be necessary. I mean, if we had the budget we passed, I don't even think that would be enough to get us out of the hole that we're in terms of how much kids and families are going to suffer as a result of the closure. So I couldn't agree more with you, Mr. Barlow.
Okay. Ms. Page?
Yes, you know, just don't want to belabor the point, but yes, thank you, Superintendent Cameras, for providing us this information, even though it is very disheartening. To finally see some additional dollars added to our operational budget is, yeah, we're taking, I don't know how many steps backwards. But my question to you, in meeting our shortfall, providing the board information, the line items, that's going to be the most impactful for our students to meet our student needs, because I think that should be our first and foremost, our priority, making sure that, you know, we can address the support of our students, you know, meeting their needs. And so that's the information I would like to see going forward. If there's a reduction in a certain line item, how impactful that would be for our students, or, you know, to a detriment. So that's the information I would like to see going forward. You know, receive guidance from the administration.
Okay, Ms. Gibson, and then Mr. Young.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I guess I wanted to start out by saying thank God we didn't do Navy Hill. Clearly that was not in the stars, and I can only imagine where we'd be right now if we had the additional responsibility of funding that public project. I think that Ms. Dorr's question and regarding the fund balance is a critical one. I think it's imperative that we get the full story as to what the budget for this year is going to be. And I understand that there may not be as much remaining left over as we would like, but it's critical that we get that documentation and clarity as soon as possible. And I think as we move forward thinking about our budget, now more than ever, we really need to, I would like to see some really robust scenario planning, you know, you know, whether, you know, we're going to need an additional 10%, for instance, to be able to extend the school year next year. Let's really see what that scenario looks like, and from an operational standpoint, and the budget implications for that, so that we so we have a clear picture as to what that looks like. Likewise, if you know, we're not doing summer school this year, how does that impact the budget, either in this year's budget or next year's budget? I think that many of the initiatives, such as the STEM schools, the STEM academies that we're looking at for next year, You know, there was the $2 million allocated towards them. I think it's critical that we see a very clear picture in terms of what is feasible with those two programs, and you know, if there is a budget implication, either plus or minus, let's get that down on paper and see the reality of what we've got in order to get from point A to point B by the fall. So, so my request is to think about what all those various scenarios are with the things that are on our budget right now, and with other possible kind of things that are going to be potentially coming up. And let's build our budget that way with really real numbers and real plans, so that we can both make our budget decisions and plan accordingly.
Okay. Mr. Young?
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I want to convey my general support of what the superintendent has proposed. I agree that it doesn't make any sense to use the federal monies for what amounts to what we had planned pre-pandemic. Second, the superintendent referenced a moment ago 125 new positions. I had an account, and this may have been too many months ago to be relevant, but 187 altogether. So I guess my inquiry regards what that count is of new FTEs, and I would propose for our consideration that that any positions that aren't schools based, and there are some of those positions still included, a lot of those positions that are not reflected in what we're reviewing this evening, and I understand that we will discuss that at some point, perhaps this evening. But I would propose that we start with those central office positions, any new positions that aren't school-based, and eliminate those positions to begin with. Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna stick my oar in here. I think it is 9:44 p.m. My proposal is that we meet again in a couple days, only to talk about this. Because I know that we don't do our best work after 9:44 p.m. And this is critical. And I'll bet that everybody's not going out dancing any night this week. Am I wrong?
Dancing at home, Madam Chair.
Okay.
Thanks for the clarification, Scott.
So maybe if we could meet again like Thursday, that would give us several days to really go through here. And like Jonathan and Scott, I'm very interested in sort of having a breakout of positions. And maybe what a 1% raise and a 2% raise and a 3% raise, as opposed to just the 4. Can I hear from the group here? How does anybody feel about, let's wait until maybe Thursday to have a deep dive into all of this?
Well,
okay. I see that Ms. Burke has a question. Ms. Burke?
Yes, Madam Chair. Can you? Okay, very good. I'm in full agreement with you in regards to having an additional meeting. Just want to make sure from the administrative point, is Thursday enough time for them to just get together all the information that we're asking? And superintendent would need to answer that part. And then also, how many days must we announce the meeting before it's done?
3.
3, okay. But my first question is, statement rather, if this Thursday gives Mr. Cameras enough time for he and his staff to study and put together all that we're asking. Mm-hmm. And I'm in full agreement of an additional meeting. I agree with you totally, line by line. But my only concern is is Thursday enough turnaround time, which he would have to be the one, I guess, to respond to that.
All right. I have several people who want to speak. Mr. Camrus, do you want to quickly weigh in on whether Thursday would be a possible time?
Well, I think Thursday would be great. We won't have everything that was asked for this evening, but that's okay. I think it's important that we just begin to dive in, and, you know, there are some really hard questions that we just have to grapple with. There's a lot of positions, the raise, and so, look, I'll work as fast as I can to get you everything that you've asked for. I won't have it all on Thursday, but I think we'll have enough to have a really rich discussion and begin to put some markers down. Let's remember, we have to reduce our budget by $24.5 million. So we have to talk about the big things. Obviously, there's a lot of little things too, but I think that's what's going to be really critical for us. But I've gotten a lot of great feedback. I appreciate it from everybody, and we'll get to work on all of those things to help guide the discussion.
Okay. Now I have Ms. Page, then Ms. Gibson, then Ms. Dorr.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I think the superintendent has answered the question. That Thursday will be enough time. Again, just want to make sure that we have, you know, budgetary implications for the programs that support our students, and, you know, what is the impact? You know, what is that scenario? How would reducing monitor support for a student initiative, how would that, you know, how would that impact the district, our students, and the budgetary implications?
Okay,
So I
Ms.
just want to make
Gibson.
sure that's addressed.
Ms. Gibson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm on board with an additional meeting, and I just want to ensure that there is public comment prior to the meeting. I'd like to give the public as much time to be able to submit comments. So, you know, perhaps by 4 o'clock, that would be helpful in terms of being able to ensure that we're getting that input in this process.
Well, we will work on the time frame, but it's virtually impossible to turn around converting all those messages to PDF and getting them ready to post in 2 hours. So we'll work on that. Okay, Ms. And Thursday sounds okay to you?
Yes.
Okay, Ms. Dorr?
I don't want to belabor the point, but Thursday's great. I agree. I don't know if we need everything by Thursday. I think a critical item would be some direction around the administration's ability to get some of these strategic things done. That would certainly be helpful to me, and hopefully that's not too big of a lift. And I also agree we should hold ourselves accountable. I think there's lots of different ways that we can analyze the budget. I think we have sometimes been guilty of, as a board, of talking about things that are less than 0.01% of the budget. And so I think if I like the framework of focusing on big ticket items first. We can always and certainly should go down to the small items as well, but I'm supportive of that approach in general. And my question is, when will we get more information from the state, do you think, on the matching funds? Is that going to be this week, do you think?
Let me dig into it and see what I can figure out. I'm on twice-a-week calls with Dr. Lane, so I'm hoping I can get more by Thursday. I'll see.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, sorry. And I do support Ms. Gibson's idea of some scenario, and I think Ms. Page as well, some scenario analyses. Again, don't have to do it for Thursday, but maybe we can brainstorm some like worst case, best case, medium case about what happens with the virus and what that means for our budget. I think that's a smart way to think about it.
All right, Ms. Wilson.
Yes.
Can we have a meeting Thursday?
Is this considered a special meeting? Because it's not one of your regular, and I just need to.
It's a
Yes, so it
special
is a
meeting.
special meeting. Yes, I can put the notice out tomorrow.
Okay. Then let's reconvene on Thursday unless I see some strenuous objection in the
To
chat
discuss
room.
only the budget.
Only this part. Yes, it's only about this. Because this is the thing that we were supposed to do to talk about the budget update tonight. And I just think maybe I'm the only one that says, you know, my brain is shutting down here. So I would love to dig into it with you all some more Thursday, starting at 6 o'clock again.
That's fine.
Okay. All right. So in that case, let's move on to our final item, to receive the financial statement for the period ending March 2020. Now, do we need to have Ms. Braga on, or is this just something in board docs?
Yeah, she's unfortunately not available this evening, so.
Okay, so do we just have it in board docs, and if we need to revisit that Thursday, we can add that in?
Sure.
So we're not gonna change anything about the agenda. We will have just the budget update discussion, and if necessary, we can just postpone the financial statement for 2 more weeks. Does anybody object to that? All right. Anything else for the good of the order? Then this meeting is adjourned. Good night, everybody.
Good
Sleep
night.
well.
Everybody, be safe.